Good evening. Welcome to tonight's Kalamazoo City Commission meeting of Monday, December 7th, 2020. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the City of Kalamazoo's Facebook page, as well as the city's YouTube channel. You can also listen on your phone by calling area code 269-552-6425 and entering meeting ID number 980-8587-2157 when prompted. And you may leave a 3-minute public comment for tonight's meeting by calling area code 269-226-6573. I'd like to turn tonight's meeting over to Mayor David Anderson.
Thank you very much, Deputy City Manager Jeff Chamberlain. I appreciate it. Welcome everybody to another Zoom evening on this dark evening of December 7th. And I want to welcome everybody I can see and people who I cannot see. So I'm officially calling this regular meeting to order for Monday, December 7th. And Clerk Borling, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Cunningham.
Cunningham is here in the great city of Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Hess.
Present in Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Knott.
Here, Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Pradle.
Present in Kalamazoo.
Commissioner Urban.
Here in Kalamazoo.
Vice Mayor Griffin.
Here in Kalamazoo.
Mayor Anderson.
Here in the great city of Kalamazoo. Thank you, all present and accounted for. So tonight, I do not believe we have an invocator for our opening ceremony. So I guess we're going to start the meeting here with an introduction of an important guest. And I also want to recognize, before I turn this over to Deputy City Manager Laura Lamb, that City Manager Jim Ritzma is recuperating from surgery, and we're wishing him the best tonight and hope to see him back at our budget meeting, which will be a week from tonight, right, on December 14th. So, Deputy City Manager Laura Lamb.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. Tonight, I'd like to introduce the OIR group. This is the consultant team that we've selected to perform a use of force study and independent review of the Public Safety Department's handling of events between May 30th and June 2nd and on August 15th. Joining us tonight, we have Michael Giannacco. He's the principal from the OIR group. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Michael. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Laura. And thank you, city leadership, Mr. Mayor, commissioners, and other members of the city family. It's great to be with you again this evening from Southern California. And I've had a chance to meet most of you prior to today, at least briefly, and look forward to engaging further with you on this project. OIR Group is a team of professionals who have been involved in reviewing and promoting progressive police practices throughout the country. And we, again, appreciate the opportunity to work with the city on this important project. Since the George Floyd murder that happened earlier this year, and as a result of those protests that were part of the nationwide response to that tragic episode, there have been a number of, there was a lot of protest activity and a lot of police response to that protest activity throughout the country. And as a result of the work that we do, Kalamazoo is the fourth of 4 current projects that we have reviewing the ways in which public safety departments in various parts of the country responded to First Amendment activity with a focus on evaluating that response, assessing that response, telling that story in an unvarnished way, and then coming up with any recommendations for ways to improve public safety on a forward-going basis, as well as the city's response in general to future episodes, because we can expect that at some point in the future, these challenges will be revisited by the jurisdictions. So whether it be Iowa City, Iowa, or Santa Rosa, California, or Santa Monica, California, or elsewhere, or Kalamazoo, Michigan, various cities have engaged our services to provide that, that insight. And so we really do look forward to it. We believe that it is critical that we go beyond the documents, beyond the reports that have already been prepared and generated primarily by public safety, to go beyond the media reports that have, set out another narrative of what had transpired, to go beyond the reports from your various communities in a way in which so that in order to do that, because all of this isn't necessarily written down, there will be a public outreach component to the work that we do, whether that's through individual engagement in this difficult time when we can't really get together in person, but the Zoom platform and other platforms provide an opportunity for us to engage in different ways. And again, whether that's through individual meetings in which we can gain the insight from city leadership, city stakeholders, and city residents, or whether it's a more of a group listening session where we can hear concerns from various members of your community in that kind of environment. We are looking for all kinds of ways to gain that insight, because we are advantaged in the fact that we don't know Kalamazoo, or at least we didn't know Kalamazoo at all until we got started. And that outside perspective means that we don't have any prior connections, opinions, perspectives, et cetera, with regard to your city. And our prior connections won't impact the way in which we look at this incident, because we don't have any prior connections. That's an advantage, but the disadvantage is we don't know Kalamazoo. We don't know your city. We don't know the challenges that your public safety department faced this past summer. Don't know the perspectives and insights that your communities who were interested in engaging in protest activity believed occurred. And in order to gain that insight as outsiders, we will need that level of engagement, and are pleased that those of you who helped craft the assignment recognized that and provided us some space in order to perform that function. So this is really intended to be an introductory hello, and there will be much more to come. And then when we are completed with our project, of course, we expect that we'll be reporting back to you, perhaps through this forum, in a much more intense way and prolonged way through our presentation that is expected at the end of our assignment. So with that, unless there are any questions from the mayor, from council, from anybody else, we again look forward to this project and appreciate the opportunity to meet your community, at least virtually, at tonight's meeting.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you very much you being here. Deputy City Manager Lamb, do you mind just giving us a very brief outline of how OIR was selected and who else was involved?
Certainly, I can give much credit to Dora Lamanner, our Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, for sort of leading the effort in terms of putting together the request for proposal, in terms of going through criteria and selecting the best firm for the task at hand. Certainly, if you'd like more details, I can certainly have Director Bonner kind of come forward for more questions. But certainly was a very thoughtful, very intentional process. The team was very, very impressed with OIR, their prior work, and their enthusiasm for the work ahead.
Was our own C-SCRAB board involved in this at all then?
I'm going to ask if Director Bonner can chime in so she can be specific with the role of other players.
Yes, please, Director Bonner.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. And yes, our own C-SCRAB, Citizens Public Safety and Appeal and Review Board, was participants in the group. It was the chair, Chairman Vernon Payne, and a member, Oliver Howell. We made up the group that reviewed the proposal, scored, and interviewed. And OIR was voted unanimously.
All right. Good to know. I appreciate that very much, Director Bonner.
You're welcome.
Thank you so
Mr.
much.
Mayor, just so your community knows, and that you know, Director Bonner has scheduled our first meeting with the Appeals Board tomorrow night. So we look forward to meeting them.
All right, getting right to work. That's great. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Yes. So we don't have any proclamations tonight. So next is the adoption of the formal agenda. So commissioners, you have before you the agenda for tonight's meeting. Are there any changes commissioners would like to see? Seeing no changes suggested, communications are next. And I understand DCM Land that we have a presentation.
Yes, it's my pleasure tonight to introduce Director of Community Planning Economic Development, Rebecca Kick. She is here with a team of staff to provide a 3-year update on Imagine Kalamazoo 2025. With her this evening is Dorla Bonner, Christina Anderson, Steve Brown, James Baker, Antonio Mitchell, Kevin Ford, and Sean Fletcher. We've certainly tried to keep staff tight, recognizing we have a full agenda tonight, but to some extent, some of the work they have to share is really exciting in spite of a very challenging year, overcoming significant challenges. We still have some things that we can talk about and be proud about in terms of 2020. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Rebecca Kick for the presentation and the team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy City Manager Lamb and Mayor, Commissioners. It's lovely to be here with you this evening. What we're really excited about, the presentation we have for you tonight is our annual presentation of Imagine Kalamazoo and the master plan goals that we've been able to achieve at this point. As you know, as staff, we work really hard each year to be sure that we are achieving what the community has asked us to do through this vision. And I would like to be able to share my screen with you. I have a quick PowerPoint that we're going to run through. And we just thought it would be really nice if you got to be able to see all of the directors and staff involved in this work, and just again see their faces and hear them talk about their work. Right now, if the host could give me sharing capabilities so that I can share my screen, that I can get this presentation started. Thank you so much. Okay, and Christina Anderson is going to start us out.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm sorry we cannot be in person to share cake to discuss the 3-year birthday of Imagine Kalamazoo. We'll save it for another time. So we are here tonight, and I promise we'll be as brief as we can, but despite COVID and all of our restrictions, we actually were able to get through another good chunk of the master plan. So remind you, there are 136 actions in it, 8 strategic goals that it covers, and we're about 32% complete with the goals that are listed in the plan. On top of that, we have another 18% that are just ongoing every year kind of activities like sidewalk repair that we're just going to keep doing throughout to meet our goals. We have 28% in progress. And so for year 3, we're doing pretty well, and that's what we're going to talk to you about tonight. Now I'll turn it over to Steve Brown to give you some more background.
Good evening, commissioners. For anybody watching, I'm Steve Brown. I'm the manager of the Foundation for Excellence with the City Manager's Office at Kalamazoo. And just a reminder, the Foundation for Excellence being the nonprofit created in 2017 to help stabilize the city's budget, lower taxes for all taxpayers in the city, and fund really significant aspirational projects and programs to support the Imagine Kalamazoo 2025 vision and master plan, and among other things, to primarily address generational poverty in the city. What I wanted to highlight this evening were 2 things. One is that the aspirational project and tax reduction dashboard has been updated. You're seeing that on screen in front of you. This is a pretty major asset that we make available to the city. It's available on our website, so the city's website, and that's kalamazooCity.org/FFE. Anybody can go there on their phone, on a computer, and click on neighborhoods, see every dollar that's been invested there since 2017. They can click on the year to see what's been invested. They can search by aspirational program, or they can also search by Imagine Kalamazoo goal area. It's a pretty unprecedented tool. We continue to update it each year just to make sure that everyone has access in as real time as possible to the dollars that are being invested, where they're being invested, and how they align with the programs, projects of the city. We can click to the next slide as well. And also, I presented this fall at length about 2020 programs of the city funded by FFP. So I don't want to go really in depth there, and we're going to cover a lot this evening. But I did want to just lift up this number of $2.63 million. We're ending 2020. It's been a very difficult year for everyone. But in a sense, I just want to highlight that, you know, the FFE and the city have made a unique response to COVID possible. And that's shown in support for local nonprofits and service providers, for support for our small business community, and for major educational supports to our KPS learners through digital access for all and supportive learning hubs. It's also a great opportunity to highlight and just thank, we can't possibly thank them all, but the partners that make this work possible, and my colleagues, the 600 plus city workers who through this pandemic have made all of the FFE work and all of the city work possible day in and day out. So I'm deeply appreciative of that. And the FFE newsletter is on its way in the next couple of weeks. So the programs and projects, many of them that you'll see tonight, are going to be delivered to about 30,000 addresses in the city, as for the past 2 years. So we put that document in people's hands. It's got data, it's got stories, it's got testimonials. It has a map of investments as well. It's just a great resource for people to have to be able to see some of the work that the city's doing. So whenever it's appropriate, I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, thanks so much for your time, and I'll hand it off to our next presenter.
Thanks, Steve. COVID-19, in order to get these things done, made us shift how we engage our community. And so we have some new tools that we've started to use this year. We have an engagement hotline that allows residents to call directly and leave a message about a project, whether it's a question or providing their opinion. It's a tool that most of the community are able to use. We've switched from in-person meetings to our virtual town halls, which is as close as we could get to being able to be out there and present and respond to questions. And we did 3 this year: adult use marijuana, chapter 18, actually 4, natural features protection, and downtown zoning. Finally, we were also trying to really get down, to individual doors and hanging up door hangers. Hey, there's something going on in your block, and here's how you can learn about it. You can call us, you can email us, you can tear off the bottom of this flyer that we put on your door and mail it back to us, asking for information or giving us your opinion. So we really started to change the way we do stuff to make sure that we're able to reach out in this time. And because of that, we continue to make strides, like in the Complete Neighborhoods goal. So you'll see that that we were working on neighborhood plans. We have about 7 done, 2 were approved in 2020, and we have 5 in progress for next year, which is very exciting given where we are right now. But the residents are still excited in the neighborhoods to make their neighborhoods better places and to better serve themselves. We have updated zoning codes after that, and other activities, including environmental activities. Go ahead, next slide, please. So we heard in the neighborhood plans and in other activities the desire to increase our tree canopy throughout our neighborhoods. 150 street trees will be planted by the end of this year, and we received a grant to do a tree inventory that will help better guide our work in future years. Also, related to environmental responsibility, we are working on our sustainability strategy, and while that document is being prepared, we had the opportunity to work with a student from Kalamazoo College to do a compost pilot project in the Vine neighborhood. And that project, which happened in August, collected 104 gallons of food waste. And so this will help us understand what we are able to do if we were to expand that to a larger area in the city. And I'll turn it over to Antonio Mitchell.
Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm Antonio Mitchell, Community Investment Manager for City of Kalamazoo and Community Planning and Economic Development. Our economic vitality is pretty much focused on growing businesses here and stabilizing our economy here in the City of Kalamazoo, and investing locally in our neighborhoods, in our downtown, and our surrounding city boundaries through our neighborhood reinvestment. Next slide. One component that we've tried this year, this was brand new, even during this COVID time, was our 501 launch. We want to engage the community and residents on a local site that's owned by our Brownfield Authority to get more community involvement, to see what type of development they would like to see in their neighborhood. Through this process of working with our neighborhood engagement staff, working with our Brownfield Authority staff as well, we had this event on a Saturday. We had over 100 people that attended. Myself also attended and talked to a number of individuals that were interested in developing this site. I gave out at least 30 information applications about the request for proposal for this location. We have also community residents that are involved with the review committee that's going to be making a recommendation to our Brownfield Authority on possible sale of this site for redevelopment. And the key with this project was, because we're doing during this time with COVID, as you can see, we were outside, we had everyone spread out. We set up a different time for people to tour the location, the site, so that we can keep distancing. And we also had food trucks and food, music, and we had a beautiful day that day, which caught everyone off guard. But we were very excited that residents walked through. Because it was on Westnedge, we had a lot of cars that slowed down and honked, and some people stopped by to get food and to see what was going on. And so it was very active, very involved with the residents there, and it was very positive. Next slide, please. In our initiative with investing in the community, you can see that we've made a number of investments in the community that has definitely been significant. As you can see with information with the storefront improvement grants of $128,000, $1 million in strategic site acquisition, which includes the site that we just talked about, 501, working with the Brownfield Authority, 25 small business grants given out this year. And I think everyone knows significantly that we as a city have been very significant in COVID business development. This year we're working with United Way. We have a new component that's coming out this week to assist working with COVID assistance with PPE, working with United Way for the community. And we have tried to make sure that we were investing into our business to stabilize them and to hopefully help them grow and expand. You see a picture here of Layla's Cool Pops in the Edison neighborhood, who we are trying to assist with her business growth and development. And she is a young entrepreneur in our community that we are really proud of. And we want to assist not only her, but others, hopefully in that Washington Square as a neighborhood area to grow and develop, just like we're doing in other neighborhoods. And I look forward to answering any of your questions.
Thank you. Let's talk about some great projects and highlight work done within connected cities. Next slide, please. Two of the transportation projects that we really wanted to highlight this year, and we most certainly understand the public's frustration in dealing with construction. Oakland Drive and Cork Street were two projects where we incorporated the asset management plan approach to street construction, in that we replaced the water main, we did all of the underground work, modernized storm sewers, we incorporated citizen input, neighborhood plans within those street construction projects. So the end result, when we're done with the street and goal, is that we're not going back there for a number of years, and that everything has been replaced or fixed, and it's ready for the community to enjoy. Next slide, please. We've got some tremendous stats up here, and this is just kind of a snapshot of all the great work that is going on in terms of infrastructure throughout the city. One thing to note is many of these programs are going to occur year after year after year. And as impressive as these stats are, they really pale in comparison to what the stats look like over 2, 3, 4, 5 years of continued investment in our neighborhoods. Next slide, please. Safe community is also a critical focus, and we want to make sure that we're responding to the neighborhoods. Next slide, please. A lot of great work that we did this year included getting out into neighborhoods and listening to the needs of the neighborhood. We were able to install 5 asphalt speed bumps, and those are in addition to the 3 speed bumps that we've got in the city right now, bringing our total to 8 speed bumps in the city. That work's not done. We're going to be back out in 2021, talking to neighbors in neighborhoods and doing more work. Lead Services is an annual replacement program. We're on pace to complete replacements in the city over a 20-year period, but we're going to continue to work at this. We're going to continue to increase our numbers. Now, 547 lead services, this number is as of November 30th, and we're into December now. And we're going to continue our work in December. This number is going to go up. We're currently working in the East Side neighborhood and Eastwood and Kalamazoo Township. We're also doing prioritized lead services for results that come back from testing. So certainly we encourage anybody that's got any questions about whether or not they have a lead service line or want to find out more information to give the city a call at 337-8000. Next slide, please. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Mr. Kevin Ford. Thank you.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Kevin Ford, Share Prosperity Kalamazoo Coordinator for the City of Kalamazoo, out of Community Planning and Economic Development. I want to highlight a couple programs that we assisted in 2019. So the first one was a Patient Care Academy. It was a Northside-based workforce development program. If you can see the icon in the corner, this is part of a neighborhood plan desire from residents. It improved access to in-demand career training. And it also leveraged other community partners and resources. This was a pilot program. The funding that SBK provided was actually a seed funding. So there's a lot of great partners involved: Kalamazoo Promise, MCTI, Bronson, Michigan Works, and the City of Kalamazoo. Next slide, please. We also assisted on the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance, the VITA program. This is a free program that helps low to moderate income families and individuals access an array of tax credits. It's certainly a huge financial windfall for a lot of families in our SBK target neighborhoods. So if you look at the numbers, 661 residents served. This was out of roughly 1,200. Total amounts refunded in our target neighborhoods, over 800,000. This is out of a total of 1.4 million in the city. So many residents and families in our target neighborhoods were able to access an array of tax credits and get a good financial windfall through this program. Next slide, please. 2021 projects, something that we're excited about. For those that may not be aware, SBK emerged out of a concern for high poverty rates in the city, particularly high child poverty rates. So in 2021, we're gonna kind of get back to that, addressing the whole family, and we're looking forward to launching a Families First campaign via a 2-generation approach. So that's what we're excited about in 2021. Next slide. I'm gonna hand it off to Sean Fletcher, Director of Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm going to talk real quickly about a couple youth development items. Next slide, please. So even in the face of COVID, we were able to offer our summer camp program. We modified it to be an all super rec, and then an all things possible program ran as well. Obviously didn't have the numbers that we would like to have served, but we were able to keep the kids outside. We utilized the pod concept so that we kept kids in their pod, kept them in masks whenever possible. And we were able to serve, I believe, a little over 100 kids, which is not nearly the number we would have served, but we were happy to at least have the opportunity to run those programs. We know some parents were very thankful for that. Next slide, please. We, as you know, are forming a youth council, and we, as of today, have 52 applicants. So we are very excited about that. It shows that kids are interested in guiding the programs, special events, and services that we provide as Kalamazoo Parks and Recreation. So, and this is really going to be their council. We want to know what they want to do and what they want to share with us, and we will certainly share that information up when we get that going, which should be right after the first of the year. Next slide, please. Inviting public places, probably one of my favorite topics because it directly impacts parks a lot. Next slide. Reed Street Park, probably my favorite transition to date. Those of you that remember the previous version know that it was a barbecue grill, a garbage can, a rules sign, and a really old piece of playground equipment. So as you can see, we have a small picnic shelter, a playground that was actually designed by the kids in the neighborhood. They picked out from several options. So they picked out that option, a basketball hoop and a walking path. And we have a neighbor that lives there that has shared with us that he really loves that park because it's helped his fitness level. He uses the walking path quite frequently. So we'd love to hear those stories. Next slide, please. And then Florence Street splash pad was improved last spring, and it received a new rubberized surface that the previous surface was in really bad shape. Some new features. It received some new plumbing, and it works very, very well now. And then I will just add that we are going to start the LaCrone Park splash pad most likely in April. Mid-April to May. So that project will get underway in 2021. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to, I'm not sure, but I'll turn it over.
To Dorla. Thank you, Sean. Ms. Fletcher. Dorla Bonner, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And we fall under Strength to Diversity. Next slide. I guess the first thing we should have said is that we have an Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, which opened in February. It was and I am the inaugural director. So that was the first thing. Work we've done this year, the Fair Housing Ordinance was done as a team effort. The Civil Rights Board falls under the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department, and we have set that board and are in process of establishing bylaws and getting to work. Next slide. We also developed with the support of staff and the City Attorney's Office, the social equity policy for adult use marijuana early this year is one of our first efforts as the DEI office. Next slide. And much more going on. We are working on our first internal equity assessment, which is just going to will let us know where we are as an organization when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion. As we mentioned earlier, we were a part of the KDBS Use of Force selection of the consultant, and we'll be working with CSPRAP as that process goes on. We've been having training for erase training of one-day introduction to systemic racism for leadership, and that includes from the City Commission all the way to frontline staff. Listening sessions held for leadership and staff just to make sure everyone's all right, discussing the issues of our time and how we can make sure that we support each other, and working with the Community Foundation on the Kalamazoo Equity Profile and Policy, Kalamazoo County actually, and that is outward facing. We're doing a lot of good stuff. Thank you. Next slide goes to.
That slide's going to go to me.
That's what I thought.
Yep. Thank you so much, Dorla. So the good governance slide really goes to a lot of the core services that we do as a city organization to be sure that we have the effective resources and policies in place so that we can put things into the community in a streamlined and an effective way. And one of those ways this year was the 2020 election. The clerk's office oversaw 4 elections this year, especially navigating the social distancing and CDC COVID requirements. You know, a presidential election always requires more significant work than other elections. And this year, the clerk's office also navigated that along with all of the CDC COVID requirements and implementing the new law allowing voters to register and vote on the day of the election, and no reason absentee voting, which increased our absentee voters significantly. I would check in with Clerk Borling, but I believe that number was over 500% from what we've seen in typical elections. Next, we brought you 311. We have been able to launch that fully, and we will now begin to benchmark 311 against other national standards. Lastly, we want to talk about the 2020 census. Many of our offices were fully involved in getting the word out for the census, and our final report out was due in October. And so we know that the city had a really good response rate of over 65%. And we look forward to seeing those results in the coming year. And that's the last slide we have for you all. So I would love to stop sharing this presentation. And if any of you have any questions for staff, we look forward to answering them. We are also going to compile all of these things in a full report that will be available on imaginekalamazoo.com with a lot more projects than we were possibly able to present to you tonight. So thanks again.
Thank you, Director Kick. Commissioners, are there any questions for anyone who is here tonight presenting, or any comments? Commissioner Cunningham, I'm sorry.
Just want to commend staff. I know it's been a very trying year, even for my colleagues. This governing and managing through a pandemic has been something interesting, to say the least. And I appreciate some of the, making the best out of our circumstances. I think some of it we actually lead to better growth in communications with our community. So once again, I commend you guys, and I look forward to the journey.
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. Commissioner Hess.
Exactly. I think it was Charles Darwin who said, always plan ahead. It wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. And I really appreciate the plan, Imagine Kalamazoo, and the wonderful work that has been done in the face of COVID is just really significant. I am so grateful to Rebecca, to you and your staff, and to everyone working on all of these initiatives. And to have a presentation such as this really lets us know that the city is working and working very well. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Commissioner Urban. You're muted, Commissioner Urban.
There we go. Well, I heard this presentation when it was given to the Planning Commission last week, and the Planning Commission was very appreciative of all this progress that's been made on the master plan, because it's really pretty unusual that a city is this proactive in actually implementing their plan. Lots of cities just have a plan and they create the conditions for things to happen, maybe if things align right. Well, what Rebecca and her staff and all the other people involved with presenting this evening are actually being intentional and proactive to see the plan get done. And this is just tremendous. And I want to commend everybody who's been doing this. My only question is, for clarification, when you're reporting on results, were those results for this current year, or was that cumulative for the last 3 years? People need to be clear about that. I'm sure if they picked up the report when it's finally issued, it'll be clear there. But I think that 547 lead service replacements, for example, that is so far this year. It's not 547 over 3 years. So there's a distinction there. Even though it's our third anniversary, the reporting, I think, by and large, was for this current year of 2020. Is that not right?
That's correct, Commissioner Urban.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Yeah, Commissioner Pradel.
I know a number of times some of my colleagues who've been here much longer than I have kind of recollected to the days when things were just cut. You know, what can you cut down to the bare bone of services and how we provide services to our community? And, you know, so many communities around the state and around us and around the country are still facing those dire cuts every single year, trying to figure out what they can cut next. And the fact that we have the ability to dream and do this work and innovative work and catch up with so many infrastructure projects that are long overdue. It's exciting to imagine that, you know, say 5 years from now or 10 years from now, where how much aspirational work we'll be able to focus on by then. And it really gets me excited to think about the city my boys will live in when they're my age, if they're, you know, and so I really appreciate everybody's work this year. I know how challenging, you know, the pandemic has been on so many people, on so many fronts, but everybody just continues to charge forward, and we appreciate all you're doing and appreciate all you're doing to keep us apprised of the work that's happening. So thank you.
Other questions or comments? So seeing doesn't look like I missed anybody. So I wanted to say a couple things here is that, you know, I want to recognize that we as commissioners will still hear about the things that aren't done. And obviously that's something we're always very sensitive to and aware of. You know, when is my street getting fixed, or why do I not have sidewalks here, or my sidewalks are in bad shape? So all I can say about that is, you know, this is not a perfect one shot going to solve it, but we're focused on the work, and, you know, we're coming your way, I guess, for everybody. So I really appreciate that. Also, I just want to say that this is one of those activities that really, it started with people who live in Kalamazoo, people expressing their desires, and that being all that information being collected in our Imagine Kalamazoo process, and then how the work actually happens. And tonight we just had a few of the folks that make sure that work happens. Our clerk Borling was here, Christina Anderson, Rebecca Kick, Dorla Bonner, Sean Fletcher, Kevin Ford, James Baker, Antonio Mitchell, Stephen Brown, and Dorla, well, I think I already mentioned Dorla Bonner. But anyway, you know, the crew that presented tonight. So it's city staff who are out there every day trying to make sure that what is asked of them by citizens of the city of Kalamazoo gets done. The real work happens. So I want to appreciate everyone who does that every single day. Obviously, even we on the commission cannot take credit for that. That's the work that people are coming to do every single day. So thank you for that. That's something kind of in the end of the year, time for Thanksgiving. I just want to recognize that, and the work goes on. So thanks once again for everybody who presented tonight. And we're looking forward to more great things in 21. So next on our agenda here is public hearing. We have one item on our public hearing. It's item E1. So I would now like to open a public hearing to receive comments on a resolution approving an amendment to the Kalamazoo Downtown Economic Growth Authority, DEGA, Development and Tax Increment Financing Plan. And is there a staff presentation on this item?
We do have Andrew Hahn here from Kalamazoo Downtown Partnership and Jessica Wood that are certainly here. Andrew, feel free to share some comments. Otherwise, I know you're here to also answer questions if there are any from the commission.
Yeah, I can try and be very brief with this. Always a tough act to follow with the great work the city's team is. I look forward to sharing our work sometime in the coming months with all of you again. A bit dry, but nonetheless a very important change that needs to be made to this plan. So you will remember back in 2018, the Downtown Economic Growth Authority's TIF and development plan was passed. That was in response to the DDA TIF plan no longer being viable, largely due to the loss of a major employer within our downtown that really torpedoed the downtown tax base. So as we were setting up that plan, I had a chance to use a tool in a way, a provision within the Corridor Improvement Authority Act that no other community had yet used, which was very exciting. Came up with what we thought was a great plan and still do. It had 6 different areas that were the primary areas in which those TIF dollars would be invested. So mobility, streetscape, public space investment, development, and project support, economic development, planning and research, and then additional programs and services. So the plan that it was, or the legislation it was created under, offered some additional flexibility as to how those dollars could be invested to support development projects, which is great, but the challenge is the plan is growing slow. So the TIF plan is done on a district-wide basis, and that collects that increment from that baseline year on every subsequent year as that slowly goes up. And that's based on those 700 plus parcels within the district. That's growing, it's on a great trajectory, but it's slow and those funds are modest in these early years. As development projects are coming in and need to have some predictability as to what those revenues will be to support the reimbursement of their eligible investments, it presents a challenge to have some unpredictability with that district-based model. If there were, for instance, a major tax appeal or a major demolition, those TIF dollars could shrink and there might not be funds or adequate funds to support the work that we're doing and also the reimbursement for the eligible expenses. So for the last 15 plus years, every downtown development project has flowed through the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. Due to the way that they're set up, that TIF is collected on a parcel by parcel basis. So they're able to isolate that one parcel, look at the growth in revenues, tax revenues on that one parcel, and then use those predictable revenues to pay back those eligible expenses. So what this long way of saying this couple paragraph change in the plan would allow for the DAGA board to step aside on a particular, when a project comes along, to vet that project, make sure it fits with the vision of downtown, step aside, not capture that growth or that increment, and then allow the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority board to step in, get it into their plan, which provides a more secure and stable funding source, support the project for the duration of that payback, whether it's 7 years, 15 years, whatever that might be. And then the project, or the parcel rather, that TIF would come back into the DAGA plan at that higher level. So effectively what it does is keeps things in the status quo. We had hoped that when we established the new authority, there might be some interesting ways of using that flexibility. Sometime in the future, there may still be, once those revenues are stable. Say we have, a couple million a year where a hit, hopefully that never comes, could be sustained. So, I did want to hit on one additional point that I think maybe we didn't make when this was initially presented. The projects that go through the DAGA, go through a very intense vetting process that does have the public involved. What those projects, if there were one, those would not have to go before City Commission based on the way the authority is set up. Brownfield projects do. So you're actually going to end up getting both that DAGA board participating at the front end when they decide whether or not they want to sign off on allowing the BRA to capture it, to say, yeah, this is a good project, we like it, we're willing to step aside. Then the BRA, and then commission. So there's some additional, an additional step and some additional transparency in it that will be the result. So with that, I will, I think I hit most of the high points, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions if there are any. Or if Director Kick or our counselor Jessica Wood have anything that I missed that they'd like to add.
I think that was a good summary, Andrew. I guess the only thing that I would point out is that this is somewhat of an abbreviated process in the sense that oftentimes how this is done is that every single time a municipality or an authority wants to exclude projects, they go through the process of amending their entire district each time to remove those parcels, and then they turn around and they put them back. And it's a very arduous process. And we believe after a great deal of analysis and review of the statute in conjunction with the city attorney's office, that this can be done by just baking this mechanism into the TIF plan itself, so that you don't have to consider it every time it's appropriate to forego capture on a specific project. So it's really all I can think of to add, but that was a good summary, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you very much for being here. Do any commissioners have any specific questions for Andrew Hahn at this point? Doesn't look like it from what I can tell. So Jeff Chamberlain, do we have any public comments on this item?
We do not have any comments on this public hearing, Mayor.
Okay, thank you so much. So with no comments, seeing none, I want to close the public hearing. Commissioners, the recommended action is a motion to adopt the resolution. Is there a motion? Motion made by Commissioner Hess, supported by Commissioner Cunningham. Any discussion, commissioners? Seeing none, Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Knott.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. The resolution is adopted. Next is our opportunity for general public comments. And Deputy City Manager Jeff Chamberlain, do we have public comments this evening?
Yes, sir, we do. We have about 5 or 6 that comments have come in so far, and we'll begin with those right now.
All right. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shalana Lewis. I do live in the city of Kalamazoo in the Vine neighborhood. I'm calling to just show support and appreciation for the moves that the commission is making to support the issue of gun violence and all the community members who have been impacted and are deeply harmed and traumatized from what's happened this year. And I would like to just say that, you know, as somebody is involved with launching the Black and Brown Therapy Collective, we really hope that you can support that effort, knowing that the community's trauma and mental health needs is a really high priority right now. And that's why that project was launched. Thank you.
Hi, this is Matt Clydesdale. I live at 579 Nazareth Road in Kalamazoo Township, right next to the City of Kalamazoo stretch of Nazareth Road and the city property known as Shippers Crossing. I'm calling in this evening because Shippers is a problem property that's been negatively impacting the quality of life for the Eastwood neighborhood for decades, dating back to the notorious sludge pits of the 1970s. The main problem that persists to this very day is the high degree of illegal dumping and littering along Nazareth, happening in large part because of the city's continued neglect of the property known as Shippers Crossing. My neighbors and I wrote the city 3 years ago requesting that you address the problem, but unfortunately not enough has been done and the problem persists. Just today, I sent a follow-up email to relevant city officials asking the city to improve the conditions of Nazareth Road and Shippers Crossing. I'm calling this evening to further broadcast my concerns. Here is the letter I sent. I'm writing in regards to the stretch of Nazareth Road occupied by the regional training facility and the wastewater facility across the street known as Shippers Crossing. It's been over 3 years since my neighbors and I made an appeal to the city to fix the blight on Nazareth. There's since been noticeable improvement, largely because big dumpings are being cleaned up shortly after they occur and preventing a snowball effect. But we still experience unacceptable levels of littering and dumping along that stretch, once again stemming in large part to the city's continued neglect of its property, Shippers Crossing. If you drive southbound on Nazareth from East Main Street, you'll see all the residential and commercial properties have relatively decent landscapes that are generally well maintained. That is, until you reach the city stretch and the blighted entrance and front yard to Shippers Crossing. There you'll find waist-high weeds, a rusting and overgrown fence, miscellaneous trash that sits there for months, and infrequent mowings, all of which is likely in violation of the city's own nuisance ordinances. More importantly, though, it signals to the bad actors in the community that you simply don't care, and they respond in kind by trashing it. The whole situation is textbook blight. The city needs to take responsibility for the problem and its property. You've inherited a sad legacy that your predecessors helped create with the sludge pits in the 70s, but it's unacceptable that the city has allowed this situation to persist for so long. Please assure me, my neighbors, and the community that you'll be fixing this nuisance property and tackling this problem. Sincerely, Max.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Scott Markham. I'm a city employee, but not a city resident. And I'd like to say good evening, City Commissioners, Mayor Anderson, and City Manager Ritzelman. I am a Kalamazoo River fishing enthusiast and have been so as far back as I can remember. Growing up in Parchment, I began fishing the Kalamazoo River from the shore at an early age. That passion for fishing the river grew into where I find myself today as a professional smallmouth bass fishing guide on the river for the past 16 years. Along with the Midwestern clients I've had folks come from as far away as Arizona, Florida, and Oregon to experience the tremendous fishing we have right here in our own backyard. Aside from the amazing natural beauty and abundant fishing the Kalamazoo River offers, it has also endured tremendous mistreatment over the years from industrial pollution. In fact, the Kalamazoo River has the dubious honor of being the location for the largest inland oil spill in the history of the United States. Still, through remediation and Mother Nature's ceaseless ability to rebound, the river has always endured and in many ways continued to thrive despite having been mistreated for so long. However, the recent sediment pollution by Eagle Creek Renewables is by far the worst disaster I have ever seen befall the river in my decades of fishing and enjoying the river. The effects are of a scale that is almost beyond comprehension, with tens of thousands of cubic yards of sludge released into the natural places plants and animals need throughout the watershed. All this occurring before ECR, Eagle Creek Renewables, even knew the extent of their dam repair issues or even had a plan to deal with them. They spent a year dithering around what to do with their failing equipment before they even began to repair the problem, all the while releasing sludge on a daily basis from here to Allegan. Eagle Creek Renewables must be held accountable for their actions, both financially through fines that would discourage such malignant incompetence again in the future, and with the requirement that they remove the sludge they set loose into the watershed without permission from regulatory agencies. Such disregard for the precious natural resources must not be allowed or considered acceptable. Eagle Creek Renewables has an obligation to make our community whole and restore the precious natural resource that they have so severely damaged. I ask that you demand this from them and be diligent in seeing that they do so. I appreciate you making this issue a priority during today's meeting and taking the time to hear my comments.
Hello, my name is Sharon Deaver, and I am a City of Kalamazoo resident. I was calling on the agenda item of new business about the Kalamazoo River, and I would like to see that the City of Kalamazoo holds the dam accountable for the damage that they have done to the Kalamazoo River, and I hope that they consider the environment and
fuck. Hello, my name is Sandy Barry Loken, and I have lived in Kalamazoo for over 20 years. I'm calling to ask that the Commission act to address the gun violence crisis in our community and to support families directly impacted by this violence. Every member of our community deserves the right to feel safe where they live. As this public health crisis continues to impact primarily Black and Brown individuals and families in Kalamazoo during a time with increased trauma and during a global pandemic, it is critical that we act quickly to implement community solutions and provide healing for those most impacted. Our society continues to lack urgency in response to critical issues that predominantly impact communities of color. The time to act in Kalamazoo is now. Please vote to approve the use of resources to support gun violence reduction efforts. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Gwendolyn Hooker, Kalamazoo City Northside resident, and I'm calling in regards to the gun violence that has been perpetuating in the city of Kalamazoo at large. And I am happy to hear about a conversation that's being had this evening regarding a gun violence allocation of some dollars. And I am very much in support of any dollars that are going to be beneficial to the residents of the city of Kalamazoo, most notably the residents that have been impacted by the gun violence. In Kalamazoo, we know that there's been at least 85 shootings and at least 14 murders, 2 of which everyone knows are very close family members. And so this is a very personal issue for me, and I think that this conversation is definitely long overdue, and I'm grateful that it's being had, but I look forward to many, many more conversations and many, many more dollars being allocated to actually prevent and support the root issues of the gun violence, as well as actually supporting the families and their children that have been impacted by it. So again, I'm happy that this conversation is being had. Very, very grateful for the work that's being done in this regard, and look forward to having more conversations and more work towards equitable solutions to the folks that are being impacted by gun violence the most. I have one question, and I wonder if it will be answered during the City Commission's comments, but wondering how the money was determined, how it was broke down to be allocated, because I don't know the specific details, but I just wonder if there's any money specifically going to the actual families for whatever type of services they may need, whether it be rental assistance, electrical, actual housing, any of those kinds of real basic needs type things. So thank you so much. Hopefully that question will be answered, and I look forward to having many conversations again. Thank you so much for your time.
This is Ryan Baker with the Kalamazoo River Alliance. I'd like to put it on record that the city of Kalamazoo and its elected officials need to send a letter to Eagle Creek Renewable Energies regarding the sediment release into the river. It's an ecological disaster. Fish habitat has been ruined. Nutrient levels in the river have skyrocketed. It's a disaster down there. I mean, the river for miles has been destroyed. Eagle Creek, they need to be held responsible. Our local officials need to help hold these people accountable, because until this sediment's cleaned up, it is going to be an issue for years. And it's not just going to be restoring the river to what it was. There's no way to do it. We need to hold them accountable for not only restoring the river, but we're going to have to hold them accountable for things like public access, boat ramps, parks, funding, grants. They need to be held accountable. This is not just a habitat issue. It's also it's an economic issue. I mean, the economics of it, paddle clubs, businesses, everyone who utilizes the river for their business is going to be affected by this. So the city needs to hold Eagle Creek responsible, and I hope this in the letter.
Mr. Mayor, that was the last public comment.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain. I wanted to thank everyone who took time to call in tonight. I know this is a different way to provide public comments, but it is so important for people who care deeply about the city and a whole variety of things the city get to express themselves. So I appreciate that very much, very helpful. We will be talking about some of those items further on in our agenda, so don't feel that we have ignored any of your comments. Next on our agenda, though, is our consent agenda, and I will turn it over to Deputy City Manager Lamb to go through our consent agenda.
Sure. For the consent agenda this evening, we've got authorization for the payment of $159,434 to Eagle Claims Management for the 2021 excess workers' compensation premium. 2, approval of a 10-year cooperative contract with 123Net for the lease of dark fiber under contract pricing. It was established with the City of Westland in the amount of $1,174,260. 3, approval of a contract with USA Construction to build a splash pad at Lacrone Park in the amount of $496,563. 4, approval of a 60-month lease with Enterprise Incorporated for 58 light-duty fleet vehicles, including maintenance, in the amount of $1,440,029. 5, first reading of a proposed ordinance to amend Chapters 22 and 33 to permit consumption of alcoholic beverages in public places and parks. 6, adoption of a resolution adopting and approving an Act 381 Brownfield Plan for a redevelopment project located at 266 East Michigan Avenue. 7, adoption of a resolution acknowledging there were no new Homestead Neighborhood Enterprise Zone certificate applications received in 2020 and approving the revocation of one NEZ certificate. 8, approval of a snowmelt easement with Catalyst Development number 12 LLC at the former Lot 9, located at the southwest corner of Water and Edward Street. 9, authorization for the city manager to execute the acceptance of good faith written offers from the Michigan Department of Transportation to acquire easements and fee title to city-owned parcels adjacent to and within the I-94 right-of-way within the city limits. 10, approval of the following appointments and reappointments to boards and commissions. The appointment of Rob Likas to the Environmental Concerns Committee for a term expiring January 1, 2022. The reappointment of Chris Bowl to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for a term expiring on January 1, 2022. The reappointment of John Johnson to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for a term expiring on January 1, 2022. The reappointment of Pam Rowland to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for a term expiring on January 1, 2022. The appointment of Joseph Buckman to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for a term expiring on January 1, 2024. The appointment of Michael Harrison to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for a term expiring on January 1, 2024. The appointment of Benjamin Stanley to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for a term expiring on January 1, 2024. And 11, approval of the mayor's appointments and reappointments to the following boards and commissions. The appointment of Vice Mayor Patrice Griffin to the Civil Rights Board as an ex officio member. The appointment of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Director Dorla Bonner to the Civil Rights Board as an ex officio member. The reappointment of Dana Underwood to the Historic District Commission for a term expiring on January 1, 2024. And the reappointment of Kyle Hibbard to the Historic Preservation Commission for a term expiring on March 31st, 2024.
Thank you, DCM Lamb. So commissioners, the requested action is to approve items 1 through 11 and authorize the city manager to sign all documents on behalf of the city. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Cunningham.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Urban. Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Knott.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradle.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Thank you, commissioners. The items on the consent agenda are approved. Next, we have reports and legislation. Deputy City Manager Lamb, are there any reports?
Just one item, Mayor, something you already mentioned this evening. We will be having a budget work session December 14th at 6 p.m. This is going to be conducted electronically via Zoom and streamed live to the city's Facebook and YouTube channels. The City Commission is also expected to schedule a public hearing sometime in January on the 2021 budget. That's all for me. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Something a little different tonight is that we have more items on our new business line, which we don't often have. So we have 3 items under new business. Deputy City Manager Lamb.
Item L1, approve the use of $100,000 from the City Commission Initiatives line item to support gun violence reduction efforts. Direct the City Manager to provide periodic updates to the full City Commission on program development and implementation, and authorize the City Manager to sign all documents related to these efforts.
Thank you. So is there a report on this item?
I believe this evening the report is going to be coming from the 3 commissioners for which this item is coming from.
Okay, sounds great. So would we like to start off, should we make the motion here first, or should we have our reports here? Attorney Robinson, suggestion on that?
You may do it however you wish.
Okay, so this is coming forward from a task force of the commission that's been more focused on this and making some recommendations. So if it's okay with everybody, maybe we'll start out with the report from Vice Mayor Griffin when we get started here. And I've been participating in Commissioner Hess, but are you comfortable with that, Vice Mayor Griffin?
Yes, I can start. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Before we get deep into this, I want to start by listing the names of the people who lost their lives in this community. And the reason why I'm starting with this is because so often it's facts and figures. I'm in data, but I want people to truly understand that we're talking about human beings' lives and the ripple effects. Victor Davis, Carmen Hughes, Londrell Cook, Trevante Brown, McKenna Dukowitz, Dondrell Watkins, Devontae Coleman, Brandon Brewer, Brandon Kelly, Michael Clapton, Robert Earl Johnson, Rachel Curl, and Robert Richardson Jr. And while we sit with that for a moment, gun violence, unfortunately, is not new, but it has impacted this community in ways that for many of us who have lived here our lives, even folks who have visited, we've never seen anything like this before. And it was very important that we tackle this issue and not just be reactionary, but really dig deep into what we can do as a commission and as a community to start off. And so just to kind of give you a little background, at separate points in time earlier throughout the year, myself, Mayor Anderson, and Commissioner Hess approached City Manager Ritzema with different ideas that we had for gun violence, which resulted in a few conversations and a few meetings. And so what you have in front of you, for those who have read the agenda packet, is an initial step in the direction of addressing some of the challenges and contributing factors and effects of gun violence. And I will leave it there and allow for Mayor Anderson and Commissioner Hess to speak on that and just go forward.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Hess?
The committee included folks from the city manager's office, as well as Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety, who are on the front lines of this and trying to also work on these issues. My thoughts were that it definitely has to be a community response. It has to be a holistic response, and it has to be done sooner rather than later. We have to take action. So I applaud Deputy City Manager Laura Lamb for a lot of the leadership in this. I know that we're probably going to get into like the amounts that are listed on here, but for those who don't know, the commission had in this year's budget $100,000 to spend on an initiative that was important to us. I can think of no other issue that is more important than addressing the cause and effects of gun violence in this community. It affects everyone.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. So this is a little unique in that this is really a proposal that is coming from a smaller subgroup to the commission at large here for further discussion. And this was an kind of an open space allocation. It was in our 2020 budget. And so we're taking advantage of that opportunity that's there. It's not something that was budgeted for something else. And I just want to really reinforce what Vice Mayor Griffin said here is that this is a first step. And I believe there'll have to be obviously more work to come on this, but this is a way that we can get started. This is really a kind of a putting together of a set of ideas for getting started, and is by no means, the ultimate answer, but it's a way for us to focus on this. We've all been, obviously there's been a lot of things going on this year, but right at the forefront, something that we probably have not talked about enough is the fact that we do have a serious pandemic across the nation, but also here in Kalamazoo as it relates to the gun violence. And the ripple effects that occur out of that are probably immeasurable in terms of how people's lives are affected. So that's our staff, I guess, shouldn't say staff, but I guess staff sort of ad hoc kind of presentation on this. And so at this point, that's the report. Commissioners, do you have any specific questions about it at this time? I'll tell you what, I saw Vice Mayor Griffin's hand next, so Vice Mayor.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to answer a question and kind of provide context into not the dollar amounts necessarily, but the breakdown and a little bit more into that, even though it's beautifully laid out in the agenda report. Thank you, DCM Lamb, for all of your work in these efforts. But so, as it was just lifted up, there are several different components that play into gun violence, but it was important that we, again, get to the root causes by one, investing in our communities, which a portion of it is for community investment by way of blocks clubs. The second part is addressing trauma. And this is not in any order of importance. This is just as I'm saying it. And the components that come with that and what you deal with after being involved in a shooting or losing someone to gun violence. The other component is home repairs and having an avenue to fix that. Homes have been riddled with bullet holes, all throughout this year. And finally, security by way of ring cameras that initially will be paired up with the Blocks program and finding different ways that we can connect community to feel safe in those areas. And so it was just really important that community guides this process and community leads what we need to do in order to solve these solutions. This is not anything about us without us. And so more work is going to be done. This is just a first step. And to answer Gwendolyn Hooker's point, one of the people among many who have been on the groundwork, doing a lot of work in the community during this time, I actually want to highlight some of those folks on the ground. Ed Genesis, Gwendolyn Hooker, Tammy Ray, Michael Wilder, Esteban, and there are many others who have been on the ground. Dontre Hemphill and Emily Hemphill, let me not forget them as well. And so it's, again, just a first step, but trying to encompass as much as possible to really get in there and start with the systems change that we need so that we do not continue to have these high numbers and these high rates and losing our mothers, our sons, our fathers. and so that people can feel safe in this community, whether you're from here or you're coming to visit.
Well,
I want to make
Commissioner Hess, yeah.
I want to make a quick comment that in the absence of an invocation at the beginning of this meeting, I would like us to lift up the names of those lives taken as our invocation.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. So at this point, I guess I just want to consider the presentation done, and we can have more discussion about this, but in order to do that, there is a recommended motion to approve this proposal. Is there such a motion? Motion made by Commissioner Urban, supported by Commissioner Knott.
No, actually, I'm sorry. I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Well, okay.
This is relevant to the motion.
Okay. Please, go ahead.
So my question is, I've read this report. I've had several conversations in the last week about this recommendation. I just want some clarification. Are we approving it under these buckets as it relates to the dollar amounts? Are we approving a preliminary budget of $100,000 so that the city manager and his team can continue doing this work to make recommendations for the full commission's consideration when there's a little bit more detail teased out in the program?
All right, I appreciate the question, Commissioner Knott. Vice Mayor Griffin, would you like to respond? Do you want me to respond to that? Well, I guess I will start out saying that, I mean, I don't know if these are like hard and fast, actual cap numbers, but this is a recommendation about how these funds are distributed. And I don't think it would be just representing our proposal here. If, for example, the city manager's office decided to spend $100,000 on ring cameras, then I don't think that would be consistent with what we are recommending here, which is more of a multi-pronged approach. Commissioner Hess, Commissioner Griffin, do you feel that reflects the proposal?
Yes, I'm not sure if I understood all the way, but from what I'm gathering, what we're giving them is permission to spend this $100,000 that we have for these 4 items, specifically as we've asked them to spend them. And if there are any, we will be getting report outs from staff. And so, yes, that was one of the things that was asked, what Mayor just lifted up. These are what we are suggesting. Please don't turn around, which I don't expect that to be an issue. But don't allocate $75,000 to ring cameras and $5,000 to, something else. Please keep it within the purview of what we've asked.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner Knott?
Not exactly, but I see other commissioners with hands, so I'll just step back for a minute.
Okay, so this is a time just for questions then. I saw Commissioner Cunningham, you had your hand up.
I guess going along in the same line of Commissioner Knott, are some of these dollars going towards just administration? What does that look like? Yeah.
Okay, let's see if Commissioner Urban, you had a question as well?
Yes, but I think that Commissioner Cunningham's question needs to be addressed before we finish our discussion. When I made the motion to approve this, I was thinking that the allocations for the split among the 4 initiatives was kind of a guideline, but I don't think that we should be over-specify that down to an exact dollar figure, because I can see easily that some aspects of the initiative can get started faster than other parts. I just think we need to have some flexibility there. But what I think the point was of having the allocations mentioned is that as far as the commission and task force is concerned, all 4 of those items have equal priority. That's the main point. How the spending rate goes on each one of them, though, I think is something we're going to have to leave to staff and hold them accountable for what they do. I hope that helps.
Yeah, so I just want to, I know it's an arbitrary line, but I just want to use this time just for questions specific to this. And if there's more discussion, make our motion, then have discussion.
Okay.
So I know that's arbitrary, but anyway, so specifically on the question of a certain amount percentage going for administration, DCM Lamb, do you want to address that?
Certainly, I think what is reflected in the memo as is really acknowledging that the preliminary nature of the budget. I think if you've all touched upon, there's a number of details that need to be worked out. We did factor in the commitment that we will continue as staff to come back through the city manager reports. Jim can provide full updates. As there are greater details, we have the ability to identify metrics and how we're really going to understand what success looks like within each of these various areas. I think that comes forward as we have time to do more research, particularly around security systems like the Ring camera, understanding what that looks like and what it might mean for distribution and connecting with the block clubs. Certainly, we acknowledge there's more information to share, and I think you can imagine that there may be some fluctuation within those preliminary budgets, of which we'd bring those back to you all before we decide to kind of go along into implementation.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Just a clarifying question. I think you hit on it in your last sentence, Director Lamb, City Manager Lamb, I'm sorry. So you'll still, the city administration will come back to us to get approval in regards before they enact those dollars. Now I ask that, I think it's very important because I will feel comfortable moving forward with this opportunity, knowing that that information will get presented back to us before those dollars are spent. And I say that because my previous question was in regards to, you know, how much of this goes towards administrative dollars. And I have an uncomfortableness oftentimes when I see grants go out and 99% of it is administrative dollars, and then the 1% is actually getting into the community. So that's my question. And then for clarity, is that, did I hit that on the head? And then that was the reason why I asked the question.
So I think the intent is to come back with periodic updates. If you'd like to condition that an actual secondary approval comes back, I would think that would want to be stipulated in the motion. So it would be slightly different than the way that it's structured. Right now, the way that we're looking at preliminary budget with the commitment to kind of come forward with tweaks with additional detail. If you want to have a mechanism to have a final budget coming back for you, then I think I would add that.
Commissioner Knott.
Yes, thank you. I think to DC Lamb's point, I would be comfortable saying the commission has this $100,000. This is our money. Let's right now tonight say that this is going towards gun violence, whatever that means, gun violence prevention, and let the city manager's office do the real work. Because as I'm looking again at the document, and I heard Laura talk about there's metrics that are missing, I would like to know more about the metric side. That's not to suggest that I don't want to hold up 100,000 for this initiative, but I want to know what the metrics are. So I would be comfortable saying we have 100,000, it's going towards this work, and then come back to us with information as you do the research to figure out, and some of it, I know we have great nonprofit partners and we have great organizations that are already looking at on the trauma side of things, but I know that there's some hiccups as it relates to Ring cameras. So what are other municipalities doing to protect public safety in lieu of the fact that there might be some legal challenges with Ring cameras? And I hesitate to say this, and I don't want my phone to blow up in a minute, but we do know that there are municipalities that are using surveillance in general. And so how can we take a look at surveillance or some of the technologies that perhaps Grand Rapids is using to hear when gunshots are fired and maybe implement that in our community at a pilot level so that, you know, we're working the long game, which is the impact of gun violence and the impact that it has on families and children and dealing with the trauma, while also working on the fact that each and every day and weekend we have acts of gun violence happening across the city. And I think the last point that I will make quickly is, shoot, I lost it. It was about my amended motion, but I lost it in the weeds. So I'll pause and jump back in. Sorry.
So Commissioner Knott, if you are willing to work on a little language there, if you haven't already done that, that would be great. Commissioner Pradel, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment as well. You know, just wanted to thank Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioner Hess for your time and attention to this. You know, I know you guys have devoted a number of meetings to discuss this and talk about it. You know, I just wanted to also just point out and just note again, this is $100,000 that the City Commission had a special fund for city commission special initiatives. And I think it speaks volumes of like how serious this commission takes the issue of gun violence. The fact that 100%, effectively what is being asked tonight is 100% of that special fund being devoted to the issue of gun violence. But I also was just kind of curious. I hope my colleagues don't mind me asking this, but we were asked sometime in August and then kind of repeatedly to notate, what our top priorities were for the budget. And I was just curious, since we don't really have a chance to talk with each other, or deliberate, I was just kind of curious, if people wouldn't mind sharing if they did include gun violence as a top issue that they thought required budgetary attention. I'll go ahead and share. I mean, I definitely included it in the top of my issues. And the reason I guess the reason I'm asking that is because, if it is very important, is an issue to us, it seems to me that in light of the fact that we have a $213 million budget, and a pretty sizable, significant public safety budget, it should seem to me that maybe it would be worth, making a point of saying that, we really think that this deserves more budgetary priority, I guess, in terms of in development of the 2021 budget, just so that, maybe these issues that we're looking at potentially, even though we're, taking this first step of devoting, $25,000 to each issue, or be $100,000 devoted to a myriad of these issues, that perhaps that we can go a little bit deeper to really make a dent on not just enforcement, but also prevention when it comes to gun violence. So just wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Pradel. Commissioner Hess.
Absolutely. My notes here say more will be spent. It's to just spend $100,000 is a drop in the bucket with the scope of this problem. So I agree, and I think if we do the dive into KDPS budget and their requests, and the requests across departments throughout the city, I do believe that we are not going to just spend $100,000 on this issue.
So, just going to say something a little bit here. So, this is kind of a unique situation. We have not always allocated a specific amount for the commission to spend as it desires. So this is kind of a unique thing. And now here we are at the end of the year. This was in our 2020 budget. So, and we're going to be talking about this for 21 a great deal a week from tonight as well. There's a presentation on that. So there'll certainly be more discussion along those lines. So is there an appetite this evening, to make a motion on this proposal and move forward? So I'm kind of looking for some affirmation on that. Commissioner, well, I'll give you a chance, Commissioner Urban.
Well, yes. I think it's since that's the money that was under our control, and here it is almost the end of the year, and we haven't spent a dime of it yet. This is something that we can do right now to indicate that this is the level of urgency we feel that we should devote to this, and it's money that's in our control. We're not taking money away from any other city program to do this much. But in the budget for 2022, if more money can be found, it comes from other projects or from other amount.
I think we've lost Commissioner Urban in
this, and I don't.
Commissioner Urban, you seem to be temporarily frozen. So we were talking about the 21 budget. At this point, Commissioner Cunningham.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little more hesitant, just because now I'm also thinking about timeline. How long before we execute on those dollars, and to affirm and to kind of hit on what Commissioner Urban talked about. Yeah, to the community at large, please don't think that we took these dollars lightly. And that's the reason why we're just now having a deep dialogue about allocation. I can honestly say my initiatives at the beginning of the year that I was, looking to insert for this $100,000 are completely different from what we are thinking about and experiencing right now. And a lot of it was due to COVID. The vastness of the issues and array of issues that was created from that one case and scenario. And there are so many important subjects, whether it's the economy, whether it's our students and education and things along those lines. There's just so many different things that just, got extrapolated in this. I will go to the point of saying this $100,000 isn't even a drop in the bucket of what we need to really try to solve these issues and rally the community more than we already have. That being said, my hesitancy in necessarily approving today, I guess I could, but City Manager Lamb, is there a timeline, expected timeline on the execution of these dollars?
So certainly I won't speak for the committee, but I know there was a strong sense of urgency that was really driving the conversation. The Block Club initiative, there's been a lot of groundwork laid in partnership with Michigan United. Kevin Ford, our shared prosperity coordinator, has been discussing kind of the program elements. There's certainly been potential block captains identified. So I think there's some good structure there. With regard to the home repair program, Rebecca Kick and her team had already fleshed out a code repair program through our block grant funds. And the thought was there'd be a possibility to sort of fold this in and utilize existing infrastructure. Again, recognizing the pilot nature, can we start to roll through and understand what the needs are? What I will say, the code repair program using block grant funds means there's a lot of strings attached. And so I think part of the benefit here is by bringing in general fund dollars, you may be able to help households and families that otherwise may not meet the criteria. So that I think has an opportunity to really get some traction. As far as the security systems go, we've had some good legwork done by city staff, by public safety to look at what other cities are doing in partnership with companies. But I think we have some more conversations there. We've been in conversation with our city attorney just to understand what it looks like of how the city can benefit individual residents and how to really combine that program with the Block Club program in a meaningful way. I think the last piece on the therapy side is recognizing that we've certainly heard examples this evening of some really good things happening in the community. I think there with the committee, there'd be the discussion of exactly what are we looking to do? How do we want to identify partners so that we can be sure that our resources are going to be going to impactful ways? And then once the partner's identified, what do we want to do to structure those funds with clear expectations? So I think that piece is going to require some more input, I think particularly from the commission. But happy to go into more detail as needed.
Yeah, Commissioner Cunningham.
And is it safe to say we won't spend any of these dollars by next week, Monday? And I asked that, and I put this out to the commission that I personally think it would be good also to get a better understanding of our budget and how that aligns with these dollars also, because it obviously will go into next year. But there, City Manager.
I would think as far as between now and next Monday, what would a delay look like? I can't imagine there'd be a substantial delay. So I think certainly if that is the direction, we could look to incorporate it more meaningfully into the budget work session, if that's the question at hand.
Vice Mayor Griffin.
Yes, I just wanted to circle back to the question that Commissioner Prado brought up, which I think was a good question. As we're talking about budgets moving forward. So I had several asks, but overall it's that we shift our focus from enforcement heavy to investment back in the community. And that's whether that's code enforcement, that's law enforcement, that's anything, because I think until we shift the way we allocate our resources, and I've said this before, until aspirational projects and things that are investing in our communities are the priority and the norm, then I think we will always be having these sorts of conversations. So that was my ask in general in terms of the budget. What I do want to lift up here is that, and I want to acknowledge the last commission meeting we had at the comment time. I kind of scrambled and tried to figure out why we weren't having this talk then. And so I want to thank DCM Lamb, because she did send me an email before that and I did not see that. So I want to make sure I say that publicly. But then, and I've said this in our smaller meetings, but to everyone on the commission, you know, we're behind on this, right? It's December, but people have been losing their lives all year. And so and I'm not saying we as in me, because last Monday at 5:30, I was ducking through shots in front of my house, and there were shell casings picked up right in front of my house. So that urgency is there every day. So I am completely respective of wanting to make sure we do this the right way, but we have got to understand that it's December, and the names that I listed started off in January. And so that doesn't even count the homes, that doesn't count the ripples, it doesn't consider any of those things. And finally, I will say, Commissioner Cunningham, to your point, I think that is a really good point of timeline. But just to throw back out to the commission, we have authority to kind of set those parameters. And of course, you don't want to overburden our city staff because they're already doing a ton of work. But what are the timelines that we're going to kick in? And what are we going to say? I just want to, put that out there.
Commissioner Knott.
Sure. I want to let the Vice Mayor know that I hear you and I empathize with what you went through last week. I know that the mayor knows this, but in July, 9 casings were picked up outside of my house. A few weeks ago on a Sunday evening, an additional 4 casings were picked up right outside of my house. And then a few weeks back on the corner of Forbes and Hilbert, another house was shot. And so this is happening everywhere. And I feel your sense of urgency. And I have been clamoring for
People seem to be losing their connections tonight. Other comments from other commissioners?
I just want to highlight one thing. I really appreciate the thing that makes me comfortable in moving this initiative forward is something that I didn't really know how to put into words until Vice Mayor stated it. It's not a focus on the enforcement side of things. Oftentimes we get extra resources and that's naturally where they go. So I just wanted to highlight my appreciation for that.
Well, I think there's a trust factor here too of, this is what we have to give, and to work with city staff, with KDPS, and trust that the numbers will come back in a fashion that benefits the most people as soon as possible. And that we look at next year's budget deeply.
So this discussion being had, I was sort of giving us a minute here to see if we're going to get Commissioner Knott back. It doesn't seem like that has happened. Is Commissioner Urban present?
See his name.
Not certain about that either.
Looks like she's back.
There we go. Welcome back, Commissioner Knott.
I don't know where you heard me. I had a great speech, but it's gone.
At least probably the last quarter or third of it we didn't hear. So I don't know if you have any comments you want to finish up on, or.
I was sharing with the Vice Mayor that I understand what she's experiencing, because my house also has, since July, we've collected 13 shells right outside of my house.
Right.
And that doesn't include a shooting that happened just up the street from me. And it's not just north of me in the North Side neighborhood, it's in Edison, it's in Douglas, it's in Stewart, it's everywhere. So I feel your sense of urgency. Enough's enough. One of the shootings that happened on our street was a couple Sundays ago at 7:44 in the evening. Another shooting was at 1:30 in the afternoon. I mean, it doesn't feel like at any point in time we're safe in my neighborhood. And so I wanted you to know that since I've been pushing back a little bit tonight, I want to make sure that we're investing these dollars. And my point that I lost, Pareto picked it up, which is we have a massive budget. Like, let's talk about this as our number one priority going into next year, and figure out how we allocate more resources to stop this epidemic in our community.
Thank you, Commissioner Knott. So I want to circle back to this evening. So there's just been some suggestions made. Well, in a week, we're talking about next year's budget, which starts obviously on January 1st, 21. And tonight we're talking about an allocation of 2020 money and just trying to determine what the sense is for moving on a motion of some sort this evening. Commissioner Pradel, you had something?
Yeah, there was one more part I missed in my notes, but the other part is that another tool that we use that's, represents what we take as a priority are the work sessions that we do. And, we've devoted work sessions to discussing marijuana, and Lord knows that I think this has the gravity that we ought to devote a work session to have a conversation about this holistically as well, versus just spending a city commission meeting with, all the way to new business is L or whatever it is. So, that's the other thing I was going to suggest as well, is that maybe we look at doing a work session at some point to show that, we're prioritizing our time, not just our dollars, with discussion about the topic.
Okay, appreciate that. So looks like everyone's back here. So what I'm looking for to get a reading on this evening is whether there's an appetite for taking action on this evening, whether that is the desire of this commission to come up with some sort of proposal that maybe has the language that's a little different from this first item, or whether we just do not want to take action on it this evening, and whether we want to wait for further discussion that's possibly included with our 2021 budget discussion next week. Commissioner Cunningham?
With that statement, I guess going to the Vice Mayor's statement earlier, City Manager Lamb, what do you think will be a respectful timeline of the execution of these dollars?
As I'm trying to put together, I guess earlier, they're each sort of somewhat, think about a horse race, they're each somewhat on a different path. What I would suggest, I think, because we have the opportunity to get rolling with approval this evening, is that would be the very first update we come back with, and it could be as soon as the next meeting, or it can be interim. We can put it in Friday emails as well. What I would imagine on the code repair piece, by that folding in, that's probably going to be the first out. And so I would imagine that we would be looking to have something out for people to start accessing within a couple of weeks. But I do want to check in with our team to make sure that I'm not overcommitting without checking with them first. The piece that I would say would benefit the most from your collective thinking is the mechanism for deploying resources on the trauma side, on the counseling side. We know that there are a number of community partners that are doing really, really phenomenal work in this space. So often when we have resources and we're faced with who to invest in, that can be somewhat of a challenging conversation. So I would really look to direction from this body as to how you all would like us to guide selecting partners for that particular piece. So not to put that back on you, but I think your input from this body as to how those funds get deployed would really be critical on the timeline for those funds. And as far as the block club piece, my understanding on that with individuals represented, that there would be an ability for that to get started also within the next 2 to 3 weeks, at least in terms of identifying individuals and starting to put trainings on the calendar. What I'd like to say is that on all 4 fronts, we could show substantial progress before the end of the year, and we're very clear when we come back exactly what we're going to be delivering with a far more specific timeline.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner Cunningham?
Yes, and I think with that stated, I feel comfortable, if whether it has a timeline or not, moving forward. I think a lot of those words just need to go on record so that we can have a better understanding of how these dollars will get executed on. What I will say is, going back to my colleagues' statements, very important subject. We do need to get moving forward as soon as possible. And to the community at large, this isn't just a city commission conversation. I need you guys to come in, put in input on some of these suggestions and recommendations. And that's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. So now I'm going to ask a question of other members of the smaller group that's had a discussion and brought this forward. would we like to see this, turn into a motion for this evening that's acted on? Vice Mayor Griffin?
I would like to, okay, so Commissioner Knott raised a good point, and so I want to know if there would be, if there's potentially language changes that would be needed to be added. I'm fearful of doing nothing, even though I understand that it will take a few weeks for something to happen. I'm very fearful of doing nothing. I feel like I don't think I can accept that. And I absolutely want to have that conversation at the budget session. So however we can do that.
Okay, that's helpful. Commissioner Knott, were you able to craft some language?
Well, between being the IT person in my house and yeah, I mean, I think that we just, gently amend if there's a motion or I make the motion that we allocate the commission's 100,000 towards the issue of gun violence intervention and a request that the city manager's office continue to investigate program details and report back to the full city commission.
So, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
If doing it like that, it sounds like that. Okay, so I don't anticipate there being a problem. DCM Lamb has been very present, and I have full trust in her capabilities of seeing this through. So I'm not concerned necessarily about there being like a switcheroo, but I also want to be sure that we're clear about this from a commission standpoint, so that it stays along those guidelines. So, Commissioner Knott, how do we blend those two together?
So, Vice Mayor, I think that your point is how do I want to say this? I get your point. I think that we have a couple of challenges. We have the immediate, which is every night of the week, some street in Kalamazoo is being shot up. And we have the long-term game, which is dealing with the root issues, impacting gun violence. We're not going to solve this in this year's budget allocation or next year. I mean, that's the long game, and that's going to require a lot of community partnerships. So I'm comfortable right now in trusting. I mean, we ultimately manage the city manager, and if they go into a direction that we disagree with, we can change course by saying to the community, making the statement right now tonight, and hopefully the media picks up on it, that we gave our 100,000, project money, whatever this special pot's called, for the issue of gun violence. We've then redirected city staff in 6 days to alter their budget presentation because we're now lifting this up to be a top priority going into the new budget year. And we continue these conversations. I don't know if that helps, but from my perspective, again, we have the immediate and then we have the long term, and the long term is going to take several years and a lot of investment. We're going to have to work as the community leader to leverage foundations and nonprofits so that we're working together with the scant resources that we have.
So to the 3 individuals who worked on this project from the commission, was this intent for short-term outcomes or for long-term outcomes?
My opinion, this is an initial step which attempts to address things in the immediate term and begins to give some flexibility so we can start doing some things with the city manager's office, knowing that there's some resources to move ahead and do those things, that have comfort that we have supported that. We've suggested some guidelines around that spending. And the city manager's office knows tonight that tomorrow morning steps can be taken. So that's my perspective on that. I don't know if Attorney Robinson, if you've had an opportunity to look at this motion a little bit yourself, just to verify some language if you've thought about that. But any other thoughts from the subcommittee here at this point?
Yeah, Vice Mayor said she's fearful about doing nothing. I want to say I'm passionate about it doing something. And again, I agree with you, Commissioner Knott, that it hopefully the media and the community pick up on. It's something that we're passionate about, and it's something that as a community we can and should be passionate about. I don't know if any amount of dollars is going to change this. What it is changing people's hearts, and like you said, working with foundations and folks who are going to be able to partner with us and being able to change the culture around this. And ultimately, it's about sensible gun legislation.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes. Well, my suggestion is that if I second this motion that Commissioner Knott just made, that replaces the motion that I made. I like hers a lot better. I'm perfectly happy with just the way it is. I'd say we could go ahead and vote on that once everybody else is ready for it, unless the city attorney has some objection to the language. But I can't see fussing over the details of the language, because this is just our first cut at it. A lot more is going to happen. So I say let's get going on it.
And yes, it was a both and for me. This was a short-term solution that wasn't top heavy on dealing with things on the back end. And so, yes, with the city of Kalamazoo, gun violence is not the city of Kalamazoo's problem. It is a community problem that crosses lines. So this is absolutely going to take all the hands on deck of community and so on and so forth. But I want to again lift up that there are people that are on the ground who are in the trenches, who are doing this work, who have been doing this work all year. And so the suggestions that I brought forth, we're coming from those folks who are out there doing the work and what their needs are. Obviously, it's not going to fix everything, but immediately, what could you get? What could cause you comfort? Not having to look at the bullet holes in your house. Okay. Having someone to talk to that can relate to you, who's culturally competent. Okay. And then some of the other things that were lifted up.
So I want to direct people's attention back to the motion that we would be actually acting on. That motion is approve the use of $100,000 from the City Commission Initiatives line item to support gun violence reduction efforts. Direct the city manager to provide periodic updates to the full City Commission on program development and implementation, and authorize the city manager to sign all documents related to those efforts. So it seems to me that motion already captures, there's been suggestions that have come along in the report, but the motion itself, it seems to me, captures, unless I'm corrected on this, that, what people are looking for here in general on the commission. Is that, am I missing something there? From anyone? Commissioner Pradel?
I wonder if there's a way to amend the motion that's on the agenda to somehow add a line into the effect of, to kind of lift up what you were saying, Vice Mayor, of saying using the guidance or recommendations of the 4 parts of the subcommittee's priorities or something like that. So something along those lines. Like I don't know if that makes any sense. So you don't necessarily even have to list them out, but it's been published what the 4 recommendations were by the subcommittee. So you could say, using the guidance of the 4 subcommittees' priorities, something along those lines. And I'm sure City Attorney Robinson or Clerk Borling are far more artful than I am on crafting a way to say that. But I think you get where I'm going.
Thank you, Commissioner Pradel. Commissioner Knott.
Well, just quickly, I'm just going to make the point, and then I surrendered the debate. I think where I was coming from is wanting a little bit more accountability. When I see the recommended motion, it says we'll get periodic updates. I don't want to see it in the Friday City Commission weekly email. I want something in real time so that we can weigh in, because at this point, and I know that there's folks with far more expertise that are on the ground doing this work, but this 4-page memo is missing a lot of metrics. There's no outcomes, there's no outputs, there's no how we're going to leverage these dollars with additional resources. That's what I want to see. And I'm not trying to hold up the process, but I'm looking for something besides our Friday weekly updates. And that's what I'm fearful right now, that we're going to just, this will be another, header in that email that comes out, and we won't have any real ability to weigh in on it.
All right, I appreciate that. Commissioner Urban, it is somewhat disorienting for you to be jumping back and forth between screens. You're still on twice. I think you might know that, but yeah, Commissioner Cunningham.
I just want to highlight what Commissioner Knott stated. Speaking for a lot of people in the African American community, for which this is a lot of which will impact, we need parameters. We need an understanding of who, what, where, when, and why. There's a lot of paranoia on, okay, these dollars got allocated and now they disappeared, and there was work done, there wasn't work done. So I just want to uplift that is of importance. I personally, I think a piece of which I highlighted in two different forms, one of which was kind of those, how much of this is going towards administrative, because we can get into partnership and individuals are using, $5,000 for mailing some newsletters. And or the other piece was the timing. We could have authorized these dollars, and now mind you, hearing that some of these pieces are in motion, I would say emphatically to the community at large that I'm comfortable enough that these dollars will get executed relatively quickly with, sounds like with the things that's already in motion. But that also is another piece that, oftentimes people in my community are paranoid about is, you said you're going to execute these dollars, and here we are another 5 months down the road and nothing's been done yet. So
Appreciate that feedback. So what I'm trying for all of us to get to here is there a motion that we could feel comfortable voting on tonight, just to get started? And I'm going to ask you a quick question here, DCM Lamb, related to the discussion you have heard. I mean, do you feel like, within a week, you could come back with a little more specificity, to this, or is that too short of a time frame to do that, or maybe by our next regular meeting?
So certainly, I will say, in particular with the block clubs, Kevin Ford, working with some of his partners, already has some really, really good information about metrics. It was a little more detailed, and so it did not really kind of share that in great detail this evening. That I think we certainly can come back on. What I will come back to as it relates to supporting existing community partners doing the counseling or the trauma supportive side, I guess that would be, if there's a feeling from this commission as to how you want us to make determination of who should receive those funds, then I think that input this evening would be very helpful. For example, if we felt that it was important that multiple groups had access, that suggests an RFP or an RFQ process, which really can take some time, but it provides the greatest access to resources. So we're going to be a little bit of a tension point. If we want to move quickly and we want to identify a partner tomorrow, what we lose there potentially is an opportunity for greater access. If it's very obvious of what partners we should be going with, we can move more swiftly. If there's a parameter that we want to make sure we open up that opportunity to multiple partners, that will require additional time. So that's where I think I don't want to kind of push back on that, but to the extent that this body has specific guidance for staff, I'd say in particular with regard to the trauma support services, we heard callers tonight talking about, and we heard information shared by members of the subcommittee. There are some exciting pilots underway to really support a Black and Brown community through a collective. If this commission feels like that's the direction to go, we can move more quickly. If you all would like to direct us to look at more research of who's doing what, that's going to take a little bit more time. So I would appreciate some direction with regard to how are we identifying the partners in that particular space of who's going to be benefiting those resources.
Vice Mayor Griffin, did you want to say something?
I do, but Commissioner Cunningham had his hand.
I saw that, but
Oh,
just trying to balance back and forth here, so.
I'm sorry. No, the only thing that I was going to put out towards the community in terms of trauma responses, my thoughts are who's doing the work, how soon can the services be accessed? Because again, you know, we have people who haven't been able to access resources for a number of reasons. And just to highlight again, having people that you can talk to that look like you, who have similar backgrounds, that goes a very, very long way. And so that's the point of that collective. So what can we decide as a commission here? Who has thoughts on that? Who has insight on this? You know, we're in December now. Surely this is something that somebody on here asked about before today, to where we can have this kind of dialogue on who's doing this sort of work, so that city staff, you know, I really appreciate the work that city staff will do as that's their job. But as electeds, like, there's some work that we could do as well. And so what can we present? What are we bringing to the table with relation to this? Who have we talked with in our networks to give us information that we can give back to city staff right now? Or else what happens is, if we wait till another meeting and houses are going to get shot up, we pray nobody loses their life, and then we got to come back and talk about it again. And then the cycle continues. So that's my ask of folks right now. Where are we at? Let's have that dialogue.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Cunningham?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Vice Mayor Griffin, but that's the thing. I'm not prepared enough to say who all I think is the right people to go with in regards to that trauma-informed component. I know that there are two organizations out there right now, TRAP and the other one escapes me. Let me see here right quick. Kalamazoo Empowerment Services both provide services that I think will be highly beneficial to African Americans, specifically in our community, based on their cultural leadership and competency. So that just leads me to think that we need at least a week. I get it, the urgency, and I'm not objecting to that by any means necessary. And or, you know, even if we did approve it tonight, we still should have a very upfront conversation next week to say, these are some of the organizations that we want to include in X, Y, and Z. But I'm not sure how useful that second option would be, because then it goes back into what City Manager Lamb stated. Then are we doing a direct partnership with somebody, or are we doing an RFP to open it up? And I don't know, there's just a lot of, I think there's a deeper dialogue that needs to be had with a little more information and knowledge behind the scenes added to it. I appreciate the tenacity, but in all honesty, there's only been 3 individuals from this body of 7 who've had a deep dialogue as it pertains to this specific subject on $100,000 in the way it's being divvied up in 4. I know that we've kind of had dialogue, or we've been able to visually see it for the last week, but now that we've had deeper dialogue, this is also opening my eyes up to, as City Manager stated, who are we partnering with? Why are we partnering with them? Then it goes back to Commissioner Knott's statement of, you know, what are our metrics? What are our expected outcomes? For which, you know, I don't know how much of that needs to be incorporated. Then it goes back into what I love about Commissioner Urban's statement: trust but verify. Or, you know, so it's not that I don't trust city staff, but I think ironing out that verification component and what that might look like ahead of time might be just as useful as saying yes to the project right now. I would also advise the 3 individuals who worked on this project, one of which really can't make the motion. I would suggest that the 2 who worked on the project make the motion, and then we can vote from there.
All right. So here we are tonight, December 7th. And I think we've had a good discussion in general about this. I want to say one thing that is, kind of parallel to this. If we begin to get into territory where we are making decisions because we know somebody from here on the commission that we want to contract with, I think that is very, very, that's very shaky ground, and we don't want to get into that territory. So if we're starting to make choices, then we need, in my opinion, we need to set some expectations, as we do from the commission perspective, and then say to our city staff, this is what we're looking for, this is how we want you to measure it, and create a process so that we are selecting people not based on our personal commissioner desires about who. So that's my opinion about this, that's territory that we don't want to get into. So that all said, just back to tonight, is there a motion that we would be comfortable acting on tonight? That we could take that step and then we can, start the ball moving. And in some areas we might be more ready than others, but we can start working.
Hold on.
So I am not seeing that anyone is actually.
I'll make a motion. I'm happy to make a motion.
Okay.
Given the immediacy of the problem and the necessary solutions. Approve the use of $100,000 from the City Commission Initiatives line item to support gun violence reduction efforts. Direct the city manager to provide periodic updates to the full City Commission on program development and implementation, and authorize city manager to sign all documents related to these efforts, given community mobilization and cohesion, community healing, housing rehabilitation, and increased security systems.
Okay, a motion's been made. Is there support for that motion?
I'll support it.
Okay, supported by Commissioner Urban. Discussion.
Did you call me? I'm just going to go. I'm fine with Commissioner Hess's motion. I said that, but that does not alleviate periodic updates, does not mitigate any of the discussion for the past hour that we've had as it relates to what in the world are we looking to do. And I don't think that it's necessarily going to help DCM Lamb when she says she's looking for some guidance. So again, if periodic updates means I get a weekly email that says, here's what we did, I think that we've missed an opportunity.
I agree. So let's just say what that looks like, whether that be every week, every other week, and what, as a commission, we're expected to get back so that it's real time. And as you said, it's more active and less passive.
Can I amend the motion to say to provide weekly updates to the full City Commission?
So if possible, I want to keep this simple. So there's been a motion made and supported. That's on the floor right now. So we can start amending that motion, or we can vote on that motion and do whatever, and then we can start over fresh. So, from those who are involved in as attempting to capture what is being discussed, I don't know if Attorney Robinson, if you have any suggestions related to that. Okay, we'll put you on the spot if you don't. So, okay.
Only because everybody's kind of, there's a very amorphous concepts being discussed and nothing really concrete. A lot of good discussion as to what it is that you want. It's very hard to kind of see that everybody's needs are being met in one motion.
True enough. Commissioner Cunningham?
I guess I want to ask that same question you just asked Attorney Robinson to City Manager Lamb. Is there a recommendation that you think would be palatable in this? Any additional recommendation that you think would be palatable to the conversation or the potential amendment?
So certainly, I think as it relates to wanting to get more specificity, I do think it's reasonable that by next Monday, when we are presenting for the budget work session, that we can come back and provide a greater level of detail, particularly around timeline, around scope, and include some recommendations. That's not to say that you need to hold off on action until then, but I certainly heard loud and clear this evening the desire to get a lot greater detail. I think that can be addressed next Monday. I think as far as the periodic updates, I also heard loud and clear that you want this to be far more active and timely. We obviously are before you every 2 weeks for business meetings. I think to start, we can certainly factor that in as a standing report out from the city manager as part of these meetings, and kind of use that until we feel like we've got enough predictability and enough understanding that we can just start getting to the work.
Commissioner Cunningham?
To that end, then, my suggestion to the commission is that we just move forward with the language that was given to us by Commissioner Hess and seconded by Urban, with the expectation that we get an update on next Monday with further details. And if there's some need to roll back, adjust, or change, we can motion and amend at that time.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Griffin.
Just to circle back to what DCM Lamb lifted up about suggestions and as it relates to the trauma component. And two things I want to highlight. One, the reason why this group came together was because separately we all reached out to City Manager Ritzema with suggestions. So it wasn't as if it was limited to just the three of us. And so, this makes me think even further. I understand that we all have different self-interests, and I know that there's different things that might, pop up for us. And I understand that everybody can't be on everything all the time. But again, DCM Lamb has asked for our guidance and our suggestions, and we have real lives that we're dealing with here. And so if we don't have suggestions that we all could have done the work to find out about, because we all live in this community, we all know what's been happening, then we need to lean into the people who do know so that we can get something going or put a timeline on that responsibility. And I'm speaking to us as commissioners at this time. And I've put myself in this category as it relates to what we have done or not done as a city. I realize it's not completely on our onus, but come on now. I just have to say that. So can we please give DCM Lamb some guidance with what we want for that with respects to trauma? I can't get off this call and see someone who lost somebody or talk to somebody from gun violence and say, oh, well, we've got to get some more metrics. We've got to get some more data. And trust me, I realize and I understand the significance and the importance of it. I do, because it's necessary to make sure we're reaching the goals that we set out for, but we cannot lose human value in all of this. And we had 300 days to get all the data and metrics that we needed on what could have been, like, we had all this time. And then we get here and now we need to figure more things out. So it is a slight frustration, but I just have to lift that up in this space, so that we all be mindful of what we can do.
Commissioner Urban?
Well, it seems to me that a way to proceed is simply for me to call the question and then on the motion. And if we have to make additional resolutions, we can do that as a separate motion. I would love for us to just go ahead and resolve the motion that was made by Commissioner Hess and seconded by me, and deal with that in the next course of business, and then we can go from there. It's not the end of the conversation.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. Scott Borling, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham?
Yes.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.
Commissioner Knott?
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel?
Yes.
Thank you so much, everyone. Good initial discussion and more work to come. We have a second item. This is item L2. Deputy City Manager Lamb.
Yes, item L2, approval of a letter to Eagle Creek Renewable Energy regarding the impacts of the Morrow Dam spillway gate failure.
Commissioner Pradel, you requested this. Do you have, would you like to present on this?
Yeah, I'll try to keep this pretty brief, but I want to get everybody up to speed who maybe has been privy to what's been going on. So in October 2019, a spillway gate failed in the Morrow Dam, effectively making it where the spillway gate had to remain open. Morrow Lake is effectively an empty lake. So before, if you were to look on a map, there was a giant lake. Now it looks like a field that might have been slightly flooded. When that occurred, sediment buildup that builds up behind the dam or in the lake behind a structure like that becomes released and releases basically sludge down the river, tens of miles down the river, including through the city of Kalamazoo. Now, probably what's going through your mind and a lot of people's minds is thinking, well, okay, so what, that impacts a small number of fisher people and, people who kayak on the river or whatever. That's important, obviously, but it's far greater than that. It's the health and safety of the community. It's the health and safety of the county. The owner of the Morrow Dam, the company, has responded, but arguably, in my view and in many individuals' view, has not responded fast enough or with the urgency enough of understanding the ecological disaster that exists on the river. The letter is asking really for two major things. It recognizes that they have made an effort to repair the spill gate. That's great, but the accident happened on October 31st, 2019. It's been over a year that lake has sat empty and that sludge has been pouring down our river and killed the ecosystem effectively down the river. But and they have taken steps to try to have filters to try to filter the sediment that's flowed down the river. They did have a public session on December 1st, so I'd be remiss to not recognize those two things. But the things that they want to recognize is that in their response letter, they said they would take a limited response near the river. And there is, like I say, really a necessity to repair significant damage down the river. So places where there's inlets for boats are effectively inaccessible. If somebody has an emergency on the river, for public safety to access the river and to rescue somebody is going to be near impossible in many places. When we went on a tour of the river to see it, there were some kayakers that were stuck up to their, almost up to their knees in sludge, trying to get kayaks out of the river. So it tells you how bad that is. The other thing too that happens is that the Kalamazoo River has a long history of pollution, and we know that the Enbridge oil spill happened a while ago, and there was also a coal-powered power plant right next to Morrow Dam for many decades, and all that pollutant builds up in that sediment. It builds up against a wall, and so what happens when all that gets released? We still don't know what kind of pollution could potentially have been, or hazardous waste could have been discharged with that sediment down the river. Now, why does that matter? Because we as citizens don't know what's in our backyard. We don't know how bad it is, whether it's safe for people to touch it, to be in it, to breathe it. And I'm not saying necessarily that it has happened, but we don't know that it hasn't. And so I think we as a community and we as leaders have a right to know what has happened as a result of that accident. We have a right to know if there are elevated levels, what mitigation steps are going to be taken to remediate it, and then what health and safety steps we need to take to keep our citizens safe if there are. The second component is that we deserve to have periodic updates on that front to know what's there, but also if it doesn't exist, a right to know that. If something does exist, we have a right to know that as well, so we can share that with our community. And then also with the actual sediment killing the ecosystem, there are steps that they can take to dredge, to repair a lot of those inlets and whatnot on our river in different places, including along the area in the city of Kalamazoo. And the other thing that we also need to think about as well is the Kalamazoo River, and in our city, is a source of a Superfund cleanup site for past pollution. And if there was potentially, and I use that word potentially because I don't want to imply that there was, and I don't want to confuse people about that, but if there was elevated levels of pollutants, and you're the Superfund site trying to remediate past pollution, and you know that there were pollutants that were released by another entity who's responsible for those pollutants being discharged, what are you going to do? You're probably going to stop doing your Superfund cleanup or have paused to help hold the other body partially responsible for the cleanup efforts. So this could potentially slow up a major Superfund cleanup that was scheduled to start happening effectively as we speak. So this is a major issue. And in the wake of everything that's been going on in the society and in our community in 2020, unfortunately, this has been kind of shrugged to the back burner. And I will admittedly say when these individuals who are passionate about the river first reached out, I had a level of skepticism of thinking to myself, man, we have bigger fish to fry, no pun intended. But, the reality is that, this is a big issue for our community and we need to take it seriously. The Kalamazoo County Commission, in a vote by 9-2, actually expedited their process to approve their letter last week. We're going to be working with other governing bodies along the Kalamazoo River that neighbor us to ask them if they'll do something similar to what we're doing tonight. I want to also thank and show appreciation to Senator McCann's office and his Chief of Staff, John Curran, who've been on top of this issue and also are willing to sign their name to this, and as well as Representative John Hoadley. And so, I'm just asking everybody if you'd be willing to sign your name to this letter, which would be sent to Eagle Creek Renewable Energy. If you don't think these things matter and make a difference like this letter, I can tell you there's been a significant uptick in media coverage on this since we talked about this last meeting, since County Commission voted on this last week. And I have also noticed a pretty significant uptick since that media coverage has been happening of Eagle Creek taking action a little bit more swiftly than you could say in the last year. So this does make a difference. This isn't just symbolism. This is taking leadership. And, I think that this is a strong action for us to take and bring visibility to us.
Thanks for your leadership on this, Commissioner Pradel. Are there any questions for Commissioner Pradel?
No, not a question, but I just want to thank you for your leadership on this issue. The Environmental Concerns Committee, on which I sit, is also willing and able to sign such a very similar letter and send that as well.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I know Aaron Wright and his team and a number of members of the ECC all agreed to also similarly lend their name to this effort as well. So thank you, Commissioner Hess, with your liaison work with the ECC to get them on board with that as well. I really appreciate that.
Mr. Urban?
Well, I move that we approve this letter and order that it be sent to the Eagle Creek Renewables. I'll just stop there. I have an editorial comment I'll make later, but this is
support. Supported by Commissioner Knott. Discussion.
Well, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mayor.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Cunningham?
Yep. I did have a question, and this is probably geared towards Attorney Robinson. Now, is this, the way you stated it a second ago, Commissioner Pradel, is that we sign on separately? Is this a holistic resolution, or is this, I just want clarity?
So it's basically a motion for us to sign our names onto the letter. So saying that we're putting the whole name of the city commission forward on this letter, and then empowering Clerk Borling to send it on our behalf. I also want to note that in the letter I'll put it this way. I had to have some people help tone me down a little bit. So we toned down language like from demand to things like we urge, or we feel strongly, those sort of things. So we were careful not to make sure that we weren't trying to demand things that we can't demand, basically.
Yeah, I think it was well written. I just wanted to make sure that the community at large understood kind of what this means and the process looks like from that standpoint.
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. Other discussion? Seeing no discussion, Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Knott.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Thank you, commissioners. The motion passes. The final item under new business is a topic that I'm sure we'll have just very short discussion on. And it is about committee of the whole meetings. So is there any report on this or guidance from staff before we begin the discussion?
Mayor, the material that is in the part of the agenda report is basically the report from staff in terms of, I took it upon myself to kind of take what I know about parliamentary procedure and explain it to the commission and indicate what's this approach as used by other municipalities throughout Michigan. So that's in essence it. I'd make this kind of side note, and this is not, don't take this as a criticism, because this is just the way you run your meetings. But the discussion on gun violence, basically you operated as a committee of the whole. I mean, that example of the way the discussion went back and forth, and you followed Robert's Rules of Order just went out the window when that discussion occurred, because you operated in essence as a committee of the whole. And that's what it's kind of looks like, if you will. And I thought about jumping in the middle of it and try to put some parameters around what was going on. But I thought to myself, no, I'm just going to let this go so that you have a real life example as to what the committee of the whole looks like. Mm-hmm. And so with that, I leave it to the commission to discuss the issue at large.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson. That was all very helpful. So at this point, then we do have did you have a question for Attorney Robinson, Commissioner Urban?
No, not a question.
Okay. All right. So no direct guidance. So now it's an opportunity for us to have discussion about, what we have generally talked about, this idea of a committee of the whole approach to having further in-depth discussions on other topics. We certainly are aware of other adjacent political entities like Kalamazoo County that has a committee of the whole model. So I guess I'll open it up at this point for discussion. Mr. Urban?
Well, I took the liberty of sending a note out to everyone, not expecting anybody to reply to it, and no one did. So I feel confident that I have not violated the Open Meetings Act by simply putting out a response to Attorney Robinson's memorandum. But you have that in front of you, presumably, but I'm going to summarize it for you for the sake of the audience. And maybe that will get the discussion going. Simply stating my response to the 4 questions that the Attorney Robinson proposed. I'm going to read them to you in summary form. The first is, what is the purpose of Committee of the Whole meetings? What is the desired outcome of the meeting? Well, the purpose of the meeting is to replace the small groups meeting, and also to have discussions like we just had on the gun violence thing, where we can have a little bit more free discussion, get more of a nuanced understanding of the issues before it comes to a vote in a formal session. The next question is, how often should the Committee of the Whole meet? I'd say as often as the small groups met. The third question is, what rules should govern the public comment at a Committee of the Whole? Well, I think what Attorney Robinson put out is a good beginning. Plus the memorandum that Julie Pioch has written is something we can use for guidance. But I don't want to get into a lot of rules here because we're going to feel our way through this, and I want to keep things flexible and so we can learn and adjust as we go. I trust all of us to be able to do that. And the sooner we get started at it, the more practice we get at it, the better we'll be. So I'm confident. The fourth question is probably the one that has the greatest consequence, and that is, may substantive, or that is final action be taken on items while meeting as a committee of the whole? And my answer to that, based on my experience at the county, is no. Final action may not be taken on items while meeting as a committee of the whole. However, a vote may be taken to prepare an item for inclusion in a subsequent business meeting of the commission. And then that, in other words, prepare it in a form that can be formally adopted with not a lot of back and forth. The back and forth is taking place in the committee of the whole. A vote could also be taken to continue the discussion to a subsequent committee of the whole meeting, or we could vote to postpone the discussion indefinitely. But I don't think we should vote to dispose of the item altogether, because that's the final action. If we want to take a final action, we pass it to the committee, the business commission, the business meeting, and take formal action, final action there. It's very important that we keep separate the formal actions going on in the business committee, business meeting, and the nuanced discussions and the learning and the feeling out of where we are on issues and learning from each other. That's what I want to see progress in the committee of the whole meetings. Believe me, this can work. I have experienced at it. I know a lot of you haven't, at least the newer members of the commission haven't. And I'm asking you to give it a try for, say, a year. And can always go back to it if it doesn't work out.
Thanks, Commissioner Urban. Other thoughts or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Cunningham.
I'm 50-50 on the committee of the whole, so I probably won't be motioning or seconding. I will vote, obviously. But I will say one of my concerns is if we move forward with the committee of the whole, I will have the expectation that we do not stop our other meetings that we do have already on the docket. So from a management standpoint, there's just conversations. I guess to the community at large, we don't have the luxury in our city business meetings to have meetings with city staff and make decision without it being in front of everyone. And the difficulty of that is, I just make it plain. Typically, I use KDPS, our public safety. All of our frontline workers, they don't sit in on the management meetings. They don't sit in on the upper management meetings. Well, the entire community gets that opportunity in our public meetings. So I have an expectation that if we do move forward with the committee of the whole, is that all of our other side meetings still are consistent and moving forward too.
Appreciate those thoughts. Other input from, or thoughts from commissioners? Yeah, Commissioner Pradel.
Sure. One thing that's continuously been on my mind is our senior leadership for the city. And then I get kicked off, so I apologize if somebody already said this. But our senior leadership for the city, I mean, effectively one full day out of every 2 weeks. So 1 out of every 10 business days, they spend working on 3 continuous small groups, which is a significant time commitment to get us up to speed on things. And I personally always feel guilty about that, especially if I'm like the sole person sitting in a small group with 12 people sitting and looking at you during your small group. But anyways, that's always been something that's been on front and center in my mind, is is this the best use of our senior leadership's time? And I would argue, yeah, it is, but could it be used better? And that's, a thought that comes to mind. The biggest thing that has always been a concern to me is I'm certainly open to anything we might want to try this differently. But the biggest thing for me is like, what is legal? And if there's a gray line, let's teeter on the side of being on the right side of the gray line when making that decision. And if there's skepticism from the public about what we're doing, then I think it's worth having this conversation to decide if it's worth doing something else. And, what's the worst that happens if we try something and, we end up not working for us? We can always try something different or adapt.
Thanks, Commissioner Pradel. Other thoughts? Commissioner Hess, yes.
So I appreciate Commissioner Urban bringing this to the fore. One concern is time and staff time, and Commissioner Cunningham, if we have both a committee of the whole and small groups still existing, that just it takes all of the time away from those city staff. I would ask that we would create a time that all can be present, that we are all here, because we can see that everyone's voice is valued. And at a time in this community when we have to have significant discussion around issues of not only gun violence, but systemic racism, economic development, education, two-way streets. There are so many things that would be served by this discussion format. I mean, I can see that. I've not participated in it. I have valued, I think that small groups are very valuable for providing me information on what to expect and how to prepare for the following meeting. So I'm grateful for those. And we do need to find a way to get commissioners information, but we need to have these significant conversations in this town. And it would be interesting to see how it go. I would ask that it be temporary. I don't know if a year is too much, or even 6 months, if we could see a difference. But it would have to be at a time when everyone could be present.
Yes.
Thanks, Commissioner Hess. Other comments from commissioners who haven't spoken yet? Yeah, Vice Mayor Griffin.
I'm sorry, I think Commissioner Knott, were you getting ready to say something?
I was about ready to raise my hand and I did this really tacky, I'm gonna just scratch thing, so go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. I was just going to say, just following some of the comments that fellow commissioners have made, ultimately, whatever's going to be the best for the community and the best for us to get the work done is what I'm going to side with. I don't necessarily care for the idea of having both, though. I think if we go to a committee of the whole, that doesn't stop. Having a committee of the whole is not going to stop anyone from reaching out to city staff and maybe having a conversation about something or getting further clarification on anything. But even for our time, I don't know how well that will go, having both meetings. Or maybe there could be, if we do go to a committee of the whole, having an option where perhaps there's one meeting for that week, and if you can make it, you can make it, for city staff to go back over things. I'm not sure. I'm just trying to be diplomatic about the whole thing.
Thank you. Commissioner Knott.
Just quickly to add to the conversation, I can't recall since Commissioner Hess and Commissioner Pradel joined us, and I mean, Vice Mayor, you've been with us a little bit longer, replacing Commissioner Sykes, but we used to, I think it was the second Tuesday of every month was held for a work session. And going back to the beginning of 2016, like we had a calendar of what work session topics we were going to address. And I'm watching the mayor shake his head. It seemed like, at least for 2016 and 2017, that free Monday we met and dove into topic areas. And as a commission, at some point we approved that calendar of when those special topics were going to come up. And just for the new folks here, that's not trying to crush the work that Commissioner Urban's put into this, but I just want everyone to be aware that there is a third option potentially, which is going back to a scheduled, purposeful work session on that free Monday, moving forward, where again, we agree to a calendar, the staff, there's no surprises. They know that economic development, as an example, is coming up in February, and they know, I don't know, roads are coming up in March, things like that. And so they're prepared for it.
I was going to give it kind of round robin here. So Commissioner Urban, you started
Well,
this.
I think that is an alternative that Commissioner not mentioned, and it has some merit. But those work sessions we had were on major topics, and there's lots and lots of topics that we need to understand each other better on that are not major. I really, my passion comes out about these small group meetings. The idea that there are people meeting with me not present, discussing things just even in passing, that gives them a leg up on some issue that matters to them, without my understanding where they're coming from, is something that I really, it really bothers me. I want to be on the ground floor of everything that goes on. And if I need to get better prepared from staff, I will meet with them separately, or have them just send them notes to the city manager, asking for asking a question that the city manager has always been very good at getting me answers for. But I feel very strongly that the idea is getting rid of small groups and replacing it with something that is fairer to everybody, and is a more efficient use of time.
Commissioner Cunningham?
I guess my other concern within that, and I'm in agreement, it's excessive if we do both. But if we go with the committee of the whole, is there an expected time limit? And I know that we get quite a few subjects. We have, just with 2 or 3 people in the room, that takes up surmountable time. So adding in the entire body, as we can even see now, this conversation is just, our meeting is here. This meeting today, is really 3 or 4 important subjects that has, taken up 3 hours of our time. So I'm not against it. If we go with the committee of the whole, I don't want to see a time limit. I don't want the city staff to be hesitant on bringing subjects forward. Obviously, we got to be, strategic on how to do that and when to do that.
Right.
But that would be the other component that I think would be, very important. I get it. I could send an email to, whether it's city manager, but I know for me, I need that real time back and forth dialogue. So, that may create a situation, and not that you guys got to accommodate for this, but that just may create a situation where I have to, have these one-off meetings with 3 or 4 people to have a critical thought session on something due to, whatever reason. But I think that would be a component that's important to me.
Yeah.
Other thoughts, other commissioners? So just to make some comments about what we're talking about tonight here, is that I think what we are grappling with is how, a variety of things here on the commission, how to best provide an opportunity to have direct input from staff on things that are happening and coming up, and some level of detail that's helpful as we prepare for our public meetings, and how we can also discuss that or have those kind of discussions in a way that's, that not only is, meets the requirements of the Open Meetings Act, but, is as much a transparent approach as we can bring to it. So we're talking about this, but I do want to say that our current practice to attempt to accomplish these things, to get our work done, we have been assured by our attorney, Robinson, that our current practice is compliant with the Open Meetings Act. So there is no equivocation when it comes from our city attorney relative to how we are currently operating. There certainly have been some questions about, is it compliant or not? What would be a more compliant way to approach this sort of thing? And, just specifically to some of the points made here tonight, Commissioner Urban, we had something on our agenda tonight, which a commissioner spent a lot of time researching and thinking about and brought to us. And, and that happened to be, about the dam and our Kalamazoo River, and Commissioner Prater did that work. So those things are going to occur without you necessarily being there from the beginning on all that. So that's just one example. And you're talking about being frustrated, being out of the loop. Things are still going to happen, that different commissioners might have an interest in and spend more time on and that sort of thing. And we will find out about that, as it comes up. And there will also need to be times when individual commissioners and the way that we process things and think about topics and want to help us with our own thinking. Commissioner Cunningham, as you discussed, you might have a deeper dive on a particular topic and the way that you need to process that. And that's not all going to get done. All that stuff is not going to get done or all of us get together in a room every time. That's got to happen. So this is a kind of a fluid situation where we are attempting to run a city by committee, communicate sufficiently so that we feel informed, make our decisions in public so everyone is informed, allow discussion so people can see inside of what we're thinking about before we vote on items, and participate in that thinking process in real time. And so there's a whole variety of things I think we're just trying to accomplish together here, and just figure out the best way to do that and help time be used efficiently, whether it's staff time and that sort of thing. So I don't think there's actually a perfect way to do this. There's just ways we can figure out, to do this together that tries to accomplish, the bigger work that we're trying to do, and certainly do it in a way that fulfills expectations related to, the public process and how we need to be transparent in that process. So that's where we're at, is, a kind of a reconsideration, I guess, or discussion, in some ways based on Commissioner Urban, some suggestions you brought forward. And so we're kind of talking through this. And I don't think, obviously tonight, there's no way to say, okay, this is exactly the way we're going to do it, and here's the rules about how that's all going to operate. For example, Commissioner Urban, I have some personal concerns, and I do have experience with the County Committee of the Whole. I've been to lots of those meetings and presenting at lots of those meetings. And I can say, here's one thing that did happen. I thought things were less apparent to people to some extent, maybe more apparent to the county commission, but those committee of the whole meetings were held at 4, were not televised, and often were in a smaller meeting, and some of that deeper discussion happened, I will describe, off the dais. So a lot of that discussion happened, and then people went out in front of the cameras. They were public meetings for sure, still are, but people went out in front of the cameras at 7 o'clock and voted on things that there may have been a great deal of discussion about in committee of the whole, which was not repeated at the commission meeting. So then you're setting a situation of, as a committee member, what meeting should you tune into, and what are your opportunities to tune into those meetings, if you really want to follow just a deep level of thinking and public discussion about something. So I get what you're describing, and the positive benefits of that you experience, but there's other nuances to all that as well. And we certainly, in my opinion, we don't want to turn the commission meeting into, okay, yes, yes, no, no, yes, yes, because we already discussed that at committee of the whole. So I don't know what the perfect solution is going to be on that. And like I said, I'm not sure if we could really decide that this evening. So that all said, do any other suggestions from commission about just kind of moving this conversation forward, more clarification on it that we'd like to see this evening. I would suggest, Commissioner Urban, and maybe to all of us, is that this idea of a committee of the whole conversation actually could also be accomplished in our regular commission agenda. When we've certainly done that under new business tonight. We've had extended conversations, which, Attorney Robinson already said we're kind of committee of the whole work. That has occurred during our meeting tonight. So another way to possibly approach all this. So I'm open to suggestions for if we want something to come out of this discussion tonight related to committee of the whole. Any thoughts? Commissioner Pradel.
Commissioner Knott, you really kind of piqued my interest with that point about the work sessions. And, not only are those like really in-depth, I feel like, this is just, for me personally, granted this is my first year, so I'm just like, I feel like you're getting sprayed in the face by a fire hose constantly, with information. But sometimes I walk out of the small group meetings and I'm just like, I get home and I'm like, I'm going to need a minute. All right. Just to, process and think about everything that happened, because there's just so much that's hitting you. And so you kind of question if it's kind of like a mile wide and an inch thick about, how much you're actually getting in depth, because there's so much they're trying to cram at you. It's great because you're getting a glimpse of everything that you need to think about and need to be ready for at the next meeting. But in some ways, a way for me, like when I'm sitting in those work sessions, I walk out of those feeling like, wow, I really understand this better. I had an opportunity to add some depth to these topics and whatnot. And I feel like I can really walk out with somebody with confidence. And if somebody were to ask me on the street, I'm like, yeah, I'll talk to you about water rates, why taxes went up for, the water rates or the sewer rates or whatever this year, because look at all the awesome upgrades in our utilities that we're going to see and make your water safer and, those sort of things. So, for me, it's almost sometimes like less is more. And, to me, if there was like a once a month work session where we had a prescribed topic, and not that those might not change as like the world changes or things evolve, but I almost wonder if we could do a hybrid where it's like, okay, we've got 2 off weeks per month. Maybe we do a committee of a whole type thing one of the weeks, and the other week it's the work session, specific laser focused on a really concrete topic that's been prescribed, I guess, if you will. So that way you've got 1 week where you can be adapted to the issues of the time, and you can spend the other week being more thoughtful of having a year-long agenda of these are the things that we really want to focus on and tackle in the year to come. Maybe that's a way to do it. I don't know. It's just an idea.
Commissioner Urban, I was just going to give other folks
of course,
an opportunity to give
by all
some
means.
thoughts here.
I'm just letting you know I'd want to be recognized when the time is appropriate.
I'm not seeing anyone else right now. Well, Commissioner Cunningham, yeah.
There's pluses and minuses on both sides of the fence, and I think that's the reality. This body, there's just so many different important topics, and I know there's frustrations on each end of the spectrum, but I would even go as far as to ask, our appointees kind of what they would prefer. I don't know if that's the right question, but how do they see some of these things playing out? I know that, we want to be sensitive to the time that these meetings take, both in the actual meeting and the preparation to get to the meeting. I think those are important things to take in consideration. But yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. Commissioner Urban.
Well, perhaps a way we could proceed is if we could agree this evening to experiment with the committee of the whole idea or the hybrid idea that Commissioner Pradel mentioned, starting in January, and with details to be worked out in the meanwhile. That would be good. I'm also liking the idea of getting a reading from the staff about how they think the effectiveness of their interaction with the commission could be maximized. I think that we've been stuck in a routine that, in my opinion, can definitely be improved. But in which direction and how far, I'd like to have the city's department heads give their opinion to the city manager to distill and then present to us so that we get their best thoughts too. Because I want them to have their productivity and their understanding and their trust enhanced as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. So I'm going to make a suggestion. Obviously, our city manager's office and other staff have gotten to hear this discussion and have gotten to hear some different ideas and have seen the email, very extensive email that Commissioner Urban put out. I wonder if we really need to take action tonight, or if we can kind of let this discussion sit. And there's been a couple suggestions made where staff could kind of think about what some of the things that folks brought up, you know, relative to this, and maybe think about and come back with some proposals at a subsequent meeting. I'm not certain if we really have something that's clear enough to act on this evening. So any thoughts on that?
Well,
I'll jump in.
It's like a 2 or 3 person discussion. Commissioner Knott.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I think that a lot has been thrown out, and who we haven't heard from is the city staff, and this is going to impact them because, you know, I talked about work sessions, and Commissioner Urban's talking about committee of the whole, and then Commissioner Pradel blended it all together. That's not 4 Mondays a night in addition to potentially small groups. And at the end of the day, it has to be value added for all of us, and it has to maximize the time that city staff have. So we get ourselves in trouble when we try to take action or come to a conclusion without all the information. And I don't think that there's any urgency on this matter. We can give it a couple of weeks, let DCM Lamb and you know the rest of the team kind of digest what they heard tonight and come back to us with a proposal that we can then weigh in on.
I'm fine with that.
Any other feedback for the good of the order on that topic this evening? All right, great. Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. So, Jack, real life committee of the whole. There we go. No action taken. So at this time, then we are on to Commissioner comments. Commissioner Urban.
Yes. Well, I wanted to make an editorial comment about the letter that Eagle Resources sent back to us that was included in our packet. I was extremely disappointed in their response. Basically, they're saying we're just the messenger. We didn't produce any of the pollution. It just passed through our river. We happen to own a dam on, and they're trying to be very cavalier about it, and it really stuck in my craw. So the letter that is going out is very mild compared to what I would write, but I need to have the advice of a city attorney before I do anything that's going to threaten international relations, because this firm is in Canada, you know, so it makes it even more frustrating. But this is how industry gets a bad name, is having the attitude that they present. And the cavalier response in that letter is abhorrent to me. I just want to say that. And so they've got my backup now, and I'll be sorry they wrote that. There you go.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. Commissioner Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor Anderson. I just want to first start off by highlighting that we should have employee evaluations coming up relatively soon. I just want to go on the record saying, you know, I think it is very important that we have benchmarks. I know that we had a presentation earlier today that showed and reflect a lot of the good work that we were doing. But I know that we've had to, make some transitions or some changes to our plans and our scheduling based upon that. So one of the things I would like to see in employee evaluations is that component. What was your intent to do this year versus what you actually executed on? And then the other component is Shippers Crossing over there on Nazareth Road. Yeah, I don't know what it is about that, even East Michigan, as just a constant dump site. So I don't know. I think that deserves a little more conversation for our team to kind of dig into to see, what are some simple things we might be able to do to kind of transition that. And I'm glad to hear that city staff is being more responsive, and or county staff are being more responsive to some of the bulk things that get dropped off there. I mean, you'll see a refrigerator, a whole house on the side of the road, which is interesting. Other thing is, I think there was an employee from the city staff that called in. I don't know where they're at in that pecking order, whether they were frontline or supervisory, but thank you. I think that is very important. Your voice should be in a lot of these conversations. I understand that we have representation through the upper management, but I just want to encourage whoever that was and other city staff that if you feel comfortable to call in, please do. We value your conversation, add it to everything that we do. So the other thing is gun violence. I appreciate our three individuals on the commission who really pushed this agenda forward, gave us some blueprint to really figure out who, what, where, when, and why, and better provide that wraparound support. So I'm appreciative of that. The other component is next week, very, 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 very important meeting, probably one of the most important meetings, is our budget session. That determines what resources go where. Oftentimes, I say it again and again and again and again, people say, well, we don't have the dollars for that. No, you have the dollars, they're just allocated in other areas. And so if you want your voice to be heard, or even if you want to learn a little more about how the inner workings of our city government works, that is a good place to start. Then the last thing, just to the community at large, you have my prayers, you have my condolences. There's just been numerous deaths just within the last week or two of individuals who have impacted this community beyond imagine. And so, to each one of those family members and to all of the loved ones of those who's passed, you have my prayers, you have my condolences. If there's anything that I can do or my family that can do to assist you, please do reach out to me.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Cunningham. Commissioner Knott?
Yes, thank you. I guess I will share, and I feel comfortable doing so because it's a public post on Facebook, but when we were beginning our meeting, the former mayor, Bobby Hopewell, announced that his mother has been hospitalized with COVID. And I just want to let him know that he and his mother are in our prayers. We know that the first mom was very active in all things city life and was a staunch champion of our work. And so I just want to lift her up and lift Bobby up in my thoughts and prayers. And to quote him in that post, he says very explicitly, wear your damn mask. And pivoting a little bit from those words, and I've said those words multiple times, I want to thank Governor Whitmer again today publicly. I can't imagine the weight of the world on her shoulders when she worked with her department through MDHHS to extend the pause for another 12 days, taking the advice from the Hospital Association and other industry leaders to just kind of slow us down. And earlier tonight, we heard, that through the Foundation for Excellence, we allocated $2.63 million for COVID work, which included helping small businesses. And I know that as somebody that works in politics and as an elected official, you joke about don't read the comments. And, I would say that to Governor Whitmer, the comments have been brutal today. And I challenge all those naysayers. One, wear your damn mask. And two, if you're fed up with what's happening to small businesses across Michigan and in Kalamazoo, to really kind of dial up the pressure on the Republican leadership within the legislature. I had meetings with both leaders recently, and they conveyed that they can pass COVID relief bills in lame duck, but so far they haven't walked and chewed gum. They haven't put their, money where the mouth is, et cetera. I think I said that wrong, but it's really, really shameful that the governor has asked for $400 million, in COVID relief, a package that she wants to implement by the end of the year, including $100 million for economic support. And the legislature has not lifted a finger to work with her. And now, given everything that happened last Wednesday with the House and the House oversight session, it's really kind of unknown whether or not the lame duck will continue for the remainder of its 5 scheduled session days. So if you're frustrated, if you're a small business owner, if you're looking for something to do, I would suggest that you call the speaker and the minority leader and demand that they work with the governor and her team now to pass COVID relief here in Michigan.
Thank you, Commissioner Knott. Commissioner Pradel?
Sure. Just a point of information for you, Commissioner Urban. So your reference to the letter from Eagle Creek Renewable Energy. So Eagle, the Michigan regulatory agency, sent 2 violation letters to Eagle Creek Renewable Energy. And that letter that was in our packet from Eagle Creek Renewable Energy was in response to the second violation letter that Eagle, the regulatory agency, had sent to the company.
Right.
And so I just want to make that clear that it wasn't in response to a letter that we sent or anything, but it was sent on behalf of the state regulatory body. So I just wanted to clarify that as well, just so.
Thank you.
Yep. I thought it'd be worth, and this is to kind of piggyback and expound on what Commissioner Knott said. I was just kind of like noodling this today and thinking about, back when COVID started and when we had the first confirmed case in Kalamazoo County. And if you think back and kind of refresh your memory back to that time, you just think of all the fear that was in your mind, like, where am I going to find toilet paper? Am I going to have a job tomorrow? How am I going to get groceries if you can't go to the grocery store? And just all these fears. And that first 7 days of all that fear and everything that changed our world, there were 10 confirmed cases in Kalamazoo County. Now, to put it into perspective, in the same duration of time, in the first week of December alone in Kalamazoo County, the first 7 days, there have been 656 confirmed cases. So you think of how many life-changing steps that we took all that time back then and changed our lives forever. One of the most defining moments in probably American history, if not in our lifetime. And we have that many more significant people, confirmed cases in Kalamazoo County, running around. And those are the people who went to go get tested. So they presumably had, some sort of symptoms. That doesn't even include the asymptomatic individuals running around in our community, working in our stores, working in service industries that might be passing it along to other people. And we learned tonight about former Mayor Hopewell's first mom. And then just to kind of put it into perspective even further, so of all those cases in Kalamazoo County, 40% of all the people who are confirmed cases were people aged 20 through 39. So in this, young, confident demographic that, life goes on forever, and I'd include myself in that segment, that represents 40% of the cases. But get this, 77% of every death that occurred were people 70 and older. So, for anybody who's out there and just thinks that, I'm just going to have flu symptoms and I'm a young person and nothing bad could possibly happen to me, just remind yourself and think of the mayor's mom, the former mayor's mom, and remember the fact that 77% of people are people 70 years old and older. So, it might not matter to you, but to different age demographics and different racial makeups in our community, those percentages are significantly higher. And think of those individuals.
Yes.
The other thing I wanted to share as well is, we need to show an unprecedented amount of love for our small businesses here in the city of Kalamazoo, and especially our bars and our restaurants. And if you are able to find some way to order that holiday pie or cookies or a meal, or just order a couple extra pizzas than you would ever do, if you can afford to do it, let's get out there and do it at an unprecedented level like we've never seen before. And if you're unable to afford to do so, you can still help out. You can still share a post of that yummy hamburger on Facebook and get everybody else, watering about wanting to go out and buy it themselves. And, you can encourage other people to do the same. So just wanted to lift that up as well. And that includes like supporting our small businesses here. You know, we want them to survive and thrive, and we recognize that it's not just the small business owners that we're advocating for, because they matter too and have sacrificed a lot. But let's think of all their employees and the frontline workers who are working for them, whose jobs could be on the line if we don't show up and support them this holiday. And then the second thing is just want to remind public, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is when I get off of here. I'm going to go make a contribution, and I hope everybody else will as well. But the Kalamazoo Community Foundation, just don't forget that the Community Urgent Relief Fund is back up and has been there to support, which will inject money directly into nonprofits here in Kalamazoo County to provide direct relief to people who are hurting the most during the COVID pandemic. And then also United Way of Battle Creek and Kalamazoo region has the Disaster Relief Fund, Phase 2 fund that is launched that's going to do similar work as well in our community. So encourage people to go out there and to support those individuals as well. And then this is just kind of a soapbox for myself and just a passion of mine personally. But I've always, during the holiday season, I just have a soft spot for kids and toys during the holidays. And as you know, a lot of people aren't having the foot traffic in stores to fill those Toys for Tots boxes and, you know, making sure that every kid has something to look forward to on Christmas this year. So, you know, if you have an opportunity to find some opportunity to support an organization or try to adopt a family, to make sure that just because we're in a pandemic that every kid in our community has a bright spot, you know, come later this month, you know, I would really appreciate that as well. So that's all I have for everybody. And I want to thank everybody for your support on the letter tonight. And then also just again, reiterate and thank Vice Mayor Griffin, Mayor Anderson, and Commissioner Hess for your leadership on gun violence. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Pradel. Commissioner Hess.
Well, I think tonight has been rich. I think that we've had some great conversations. We've brought some things to the forefront that needed to be talked about, that need to be brought forward. My theme is community. And as I always say, community means to have charge up together. Community is a verb. Community is an action word. It's something that we do. And, you know, Commissioner Prater, you pretty much talked about many of the things I wanted to mention. But Saturday night, Saturday, all day Saturday, and then I returned Saturday night to downtown. Thank you to the downtown Kalamazoo folks and all of the merchants down there. Just a plea, do your shopping, your holiday shopping downtown. There were lines outside the stores downtown on the mall and around of people waiting to get in. Masked, it is masked and it is safe. I ate dinner on Saturday night at Roostica outside in 32-degree weather. And it was awesome. So the feeling downtown Kalamazoo was the feeling of community. Santa Claus and his wife are at Burdick's, you know, and taking pictures with kids, masked and distant. So there is still a holiday feeling. It's different. There was no snow. And I really want to say that thank you to the folks downtown for doing that, and for being there and available for our community. It's still festive, and thanks to the city and all the folks who really did the hard work of putting up the lights and making it a festive atmosphere. We need to support our healthcare workers. That is, and again, thank you for saying it first, Erin. Wear your damn mask. Wear your damn mask. Our healthcare workers here in Kalamazoo are overburdened and tired, and they need our support. So think before you go, or for sure mask up, wash your hands, and stay distant. One of the COVID victims that was very close and dear to me was Dorothy Young, the longtime principal of Hillside Middle School, and who has had an effect on so many families' lives in this community. So along with our prayers for Bobby's mom, my prayers go out to Dorothy's family and those who loved her. There you go. So community, having charge up together. Thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Vice Mayor Griffin.
Yes, so just to start off, finishing up on the gun violence talk, I'd like to highlight the Isaac Gun Violence Task Force as one of the groups that does work continuously on this, and thank them for their efforts. And also, for anyone who may not be very familiar or not have a lot of understanding on gun violence, there was an event put together a month or so ago called It's a Trip. That is available online. Isaac has it hosted on their website, or you can Google It's a Trip, TRIP, and Isaac, ISAAC, and you can watch that. It's about 2 hours, but it'll give you some good insight, good information, just so you can be caught up to speed if you're not already. And again, thank everyone who's on the ground doing the work. And I appreciate the conversation that we have here. I would rather something be done slowly right than quickly wrong. But also, you know, keeping that urgency in the back of our minds at all times. I want to thank Commissioner Praedel for the work that you put in to bring that letter forward. That's an example, as I was lifting up earlier, that we all can't do all things, but, you know, having people that put in work and then bring that back. I'm so comfortable in the work that you put in and rely, you know, on what you've done. So I'm confident in signing on to that letter. So I just want to thank you. Thank you for that, and for putting that work in. I also wanted to thank city staff for all of the work that they do all the time and making the plans that we put in IK 2025 an actual reality by working them. And I know that's not easy. Is definitely appreciated. I want to thank Mayor Anderson for the work that he's doing and all with housing. I know there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that can't get talked about because it's a lot of work, but I do know specifically with the river and that being opened up. So for folks who don't know, as of December 2nd, the river is open during the day as a temporary day shelter for folks. And that's at 517 Wallbridge. And it's Monday through Friday, 8:15 to 4:15, and that's going to go through March 2021. And no, that's not everything, but it's a huge step. And thank you, Mayor, for your continued efforts in those spaces. Also, to what Commissioner Cunningham said, I absolutely support that as far as benchmarks for our evaluations, and hope that we can come to that sooner than later, so that we can have a really strong process moving forward. And I just want to ask the community to be graceful with one another. It's a lot of loss. We're in holiday times. Those are not always easy for everyone for a plethora of reasons. We're still continuing to manage COVID, and some are managing it better than others, but please be mindful of other people. Wear your mask, wash your hands, and stay away from folks as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Wow. That was a lot. It's interesting sitting at the end of this discussion, and I feel like I'm sort of part of a big brain that is at least a 7-person brain, some sort of brain meld that happens. And as you sit with your mouth shut, which sometimes politicians aren't always great at doing, you hear, I'm not pointing any fingers. You sometimes hear, you know, the exact things said that needed to be said, and you don't have to say everything. And in addition, you also find that a lot of ground gets covered and a lot of things get said that maybe you wouldn't have thought of saying, and how important that is too. So I appreciate working with this 7-person brain we have going here. and it's very, very meaningful for me. The comments I want to make are a little more personal, I guess, tonight. And so I will try my best not to be emotional about this, but I can tell you that I was very shaken before this meeting started. And it was because I got the news of Maggie Bodley being in the hospital and suffering from COVID. And for a moment, I had the thought, wow, I've really got to pull it together before this meeting. This is really having a profound impact on me. And it made me think about a variety of things that I had thought about talking about tonight. And it made me think about this, is that, that I am a blessed person. And I'm sorry about this, but today is December 7th, and it's something we don't talk about sometimes that much anymore, but on December 7th has been a day that we have recognized for a long, long time in this country, and it seems kind of important in a way, talking about Commissioner Pradel about events that are life-changing. And I guess in terms of blessings for me, it related to that, it made me think of three women that I wanted to mention tonight. So the first is my mother, who I got to talk to right before this meeting, who lives here in Kalamazoo. And I was talking to my mother today about Sunday, December 7th, 1941, which she remembers just as vividly as many of us might remember 9/11 and where we were that day when we heard the news and what that felt like. And she remembers that day, Sunday, December 7th, and it just so happened that she was at her Uncle Bill and Aunt Edna's house because her father had been, who was a farmer, they were all farmers in Illinois, and her father had actually been kicked in the face by a horse the day before and was taken to the hospital. And he survived all that. But so she remembers sitting in her Uncle Bill and Aunt Edna's house on that Sunday with her cousins, listening to the radio and having this report come on about Pearl Harbor. And just being stunned to silence and not knowing what the future held, which it held a lot of loss for a lot of people across this country, and a lot of giving up, and a lot of commitment, and a lot of rationing, and a lot of loss of life, and a big, big transformative time for people who lived through that, and us all the way to this time. So I want to recognize that is an event that was profoundly impacted this nation and individuals in a lot of ways. And it also reminds me that people were strong during that, and people committed to that, and people understood a national effort related to that. And that's a good idea to remember that, and that those are values and actions that we can also deploy personally and as a community during this event that we're going through here. And the next woman that I want to recognize is Dorothy Young. So Dorothy Young passed recently. She's a community icon. And my experience with Dorothy Young is this, and I will continually give her credit for starting my political career. And that was when my daughters went to Hillside Middle School, where she was principal. And at that time, I was basically a single parent raising 3 daughters. And I worked construction. That's how I supported us. And I was pretty shy, actually. And I still am in a lot of ways. And Dorothy Young was one of those people who decided things and then basically asked / told you to do it. And that was how she ran her middle school. And she was somebody who, over and over again, knew kids' names in that school and loved them and expected a lot of them at the same time. And she also knew the kids' names. She knew their parents' names and probably their grandparents' names, and brought something to that middle school experience that, was profound and can't be measured. And for me as well, he basically said to me, we need people on what's called the Parent Teacher Student Organization, PTSO. We need fathers on the PTSO. So it's like, okay, I'll start being on the PTSO. And then I can't remember what happened, if someone stepped down, and that was my first election in Kalamazoo. And the idea was that we needed a president for the PTSO. And Dorothy Young said to me, I think you should put your hat in the ring to run for president of the PTSO, which I had no thought of doing. And so I did. And I've told people that was the easiest election I've ever had in my entire life. It's just a matter of putting up your hand up and no one else runs. And so there you go. So I ended up doing that for years as my 3 daughters went through Hillside, and then followed up and ended up being PTSO and then PTSO president at Kalamazoo Central when Principal Payton was there, actually, after that. So I owe a lot of credit to watching how Dorothy Young did her work, watching how she was engaged with the community, and watching how she asked people to step up and do that work as well. So I'm recognizing that she has passed away. I believe there may have been COVID involved in that. I'm not certain 100%, but so I send out my best wishes to her family. And then how I started this is that the last woman I want to talk about tonight is Maggie Bodley. And once again, a person who has profound effect on my life. Yes, I love, know, and respect Maggie Bodley. And more so, I have to say, is that she raised a son who is a brother to me. So I always refer to him as my mayor. I served with him the entire time he was mayor. And, he was and is a man who exemplified the best, I think, in community. And having a mom like Maggie Bodley, I think made a huge difference in that being the case. So as soon as I heard the news tonight, my heart dropped. And tonight, I am asking for all of us and for the community to pray for Maggie Bodley. She's over in Borges Hospital right now, and the mayor assured me she's stable. I think he wanted to help me, come back from my, my really quite heightened level of concern when I first heard the news. But she's stable, as I understand that. But every ounce of energy that we can send her way tonight, I think is really important as a community. So I appreciate everybody joining me in that, and for Mayor Bobby Hopewell as well. Always important, keep your hearts open. I love you, Kalamazoo. We're adjourned.